we'll start. So good morning, good afternoon to all. A warm welcome to this session of World Environment Day. And today we have a very good panelists who are all experts from different domain. And definitely this session is going to be a very useful session for all of us. And looking forward from the panelists for their very provoking thought process, which they are going to share it with all of us. And I welcome you all on behalf of CCC to this World Environment Day. And before going into the actual session, a small presentation about our association, Consultants Consortium of Chennai. So Consultants Consortium of Chennai is registered under Societies Act Tamil Nadu and located at Chennai City in Tamil Nadu, India. And it's a forum for management system consultants and other allied consultants and sector agnostic consultants connected to MSME segment, offering diverse range of services. And our association works closely with industry platforms. That's our great strength, in fact. And the governing council members comprise of various streams of business consultants with many years of connectivity with the industry and a lot of experience. And our prime objective is to promote excellence, professional competency and ethics in the profession of management system consulting, and to ensure service of quality and value, which is important in the industry of management consulting, by disseminating knowledge, which is very important, knowledge management, and providing ongoing education, learning opportunities and monitoring mechanisms, and to provide skilled and competent consultants to industry bodies for implementing all these management systems in place, and to disseminate and strengthen the knowledge of the consultants in connection with the professionals of the various industries, to standardize the consulting practices among the members of the association, and to develop, educate, enforce and administrate code of professional conduct, discipline, ethics and etiquette for the members of the association and the consultants. And our objective is to focus on industry education, promoting quality as a part of national quality mission, and to promote various management system standards that are needed for the business across the sectors, and to be the representative voice of management system consulting community. So that's one of the main objective of CCC, and we are doing that well. And to focus on knowledge dissemination to the industry on an ongoing basis about standards, certifications, accreditations, inspections, regulations, etc. So there is a dire need among the industries to differentiate between these terminologies and also how to implement them in their own sectors. And the primary members, as I already told you, are management system consultants, and our allied members are technical consultants from various domains and from regulatory bodies, from sector-specific domain consultants, technology consultants, health and safety consultants, risk management consultants, marketing and branding consultants, and industry bodies and corporate entities. And our aspiration is to encourage more consultants become members of our association and lead industry engagements to strengthen the voice of CCC across southern region. And of course, now we have formed a pan-India association, which is now soon going to be registered in a formal manner. And the names and other things are now in the pipeline, and we will be soon registering that association also. And to be the representative voice in some of the state government's initiatives to educate industry to choose responsibly quality certifications, which is also a very much important focus of our association, and to focus on upskilling youth. Particularly, we have had a lot of sessions during the COVID pandemic for upskilling our own youth to think, dream, breathe quality in their career path to create good quality ecosystem, and dream to be part of the international network and representative forums. Thank you very much. And now I'll move on to the introduction of our panelists today. Before that, I want to share the first topic, which is the first presenter of this World Environment Day session, Ms. R.V. Anuradha, who is a partner of Claris Lawrence Associates. And the topic which she is going to share her thought process is Carbon Adjusted Border Mechanism, EVE, And will it be a trade barrier to the Indian industry? And that's the topic which she is going to share her thought process. And she is a partner at Claris Law Associates, New Delhi, and specializes in international economic laws and environmental laws, advises companies, industry associations, and also government on various issues arising under the WTO agreements, free trade agreements, bilateral investment protection agreements, including disputes, and also undertakes studies for the Commonwealth Secretariat and the International Trade Center, and associated as external faculty with the World Trade Institute and the National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, Hyderabad, National Law School of India, University, Bengaluru, and National University, Odisha. Now, I heartily welcome Anuradha ma'am to deliver her address for this on this eve of World Environment Day. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shivraman, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to this event, and also for accommodating my request to, in terms of rescheduling a little bit, because honestly, it is not a very auspicious way to start the celebrations of the World Environment Day with a topic which is actually a unilateral measure, which goes against the very concept of finding multilateral solutions to global problems, particularly climate change related problems. Be that as it may, it is also a mark of this measure is also perhaps in a sense a signal of things to come, as globally countries are fighting towards the race and running towards the race to address the issue of climate change. We are likely to see more and more such unilateral measures which countries perceive as imperative to safeguard their own competitiveness in their industrial sectors. Because at the end of the day, any kind of emission reduction would mean higher obligations on part of the industry. And as far as the EU is concerned, the essential concept behind this carbon border adjustment mechanism, which they have enacted as of early May, and which is expected to come into force from the 1st of October 2023, and then gets fully implemented from 3 years hence, from the 1st of January 2026. It is essentially a measure which is targeted at safeguarding the competitiveness of EU's own industry that is required to undertake higher obligations on emission reductions. Now, with that broad background, let me kind of step back a little bit it's important to understand the lay of the land as far as the legal architecture is concerned, before we understand what are the issues and what are the concerns with this measure. That's one part of it. And the second part of it is what can consultants such as yourselves and industry bodies that are represented in today's session, what do they need to be aware of, and what do they need to start preparing towards in order to ensure that we are prepared as far as compliance is concerned as well. So in other words, talking about the legalities of a measure is one aspect. There are larger battles to be fought, but on the other hand, preparedness is also equally important. So in a sense, both these issues really go hand in hand. So again, to step back a little bit, as I mentioned, the overall legal architecture at the international level, when we talk about climate change, is governed by what all of us would be familiar with. It's the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. Now, this convention saw its birth in 1992, but it's actually become more and more prominent only in the last few years, with the threat of climate change being acknowledged as being far more real, far more certain, and far more pretty much at our doorstep, and thereby enhancing the urgency for addressing this issue. Now, as you would all agree and understand, at the international level, when countries come together, it is a multilateral set of obligations that countries enter into. Now, it is in this regard that the UNFCCC, which was followed by what is called the Paris Agreement, for implementing some of the principles of the UNFCCC becomes important. Because this agreement, the Paris Agreement, essentially put in place a mechanism called nationally determined contributions. Now, the concept of nationally determined contribution essentially means that each country would determine what its contribution towards emission reductions would be within an overall set of parameters. And it was very clear when this was agreed that there is no one-size-fits-all approach, because India's situation is different from that of EU. India's historical contributions are also completely different from that of EU, and our per capita emissions are among the lowest globally even today. The other important aspect is that countries like EU, the US, developed economies have achieved a certain degree of industrialization because they have occupied the carbon space, in the sense that the pollution that had to happen during industrialization has already happened, and they have actually achieved a certain level of development, whereas countries like ours are still on that path to development. Sure enough, this has to be a cleaner path, a greener path. So therefore, what the UNFCCC said was any kind of emission reductions by developing countries has to necessarily be accompanied by obligations towards financial transfer and technology transfer from developed countries to developing countries. Again, most of you would have read in the papers in the last few years, there is a repetition ad nauseum of this magic target of $100 billion per year, which was supposed to be achieved by 2020. That $100 billion figure is essentially the contribution, the financial contribution from developed countries to developing countries, which had to be achieved by 2020. We are in 2023 today, and we are nowhere near that target or that fulfillment of that promise towards financial resources. Now, it is also again completely clear that countries like ours are not shying away from obligations, because as you know, there is the path towards green development is something which is already being put in place. But also to understand, when we say that there is a nationally determined contribution for India, that itself encompasses within the concept that there can be economy-wide reductions. That means the government can decide what it has to focus on and what it has to invest in to achieve that target. So there's no specific prioritization of sectors under the UNFCCC. It is left to each country. Again, to very broadly bring out the difference between what EU's NDCs is and India's, and the reason we do it is because today we are talking about EU's carbon border adjustment measure. Now, both EU and India have different NDCs. EU's NDC is net emission reductions of at least 55% by 2030 and net zero by 2050 compared to the 1990 levels. India's NDC is to reduce carbon intensity by 45% by 2030. Our net zero target India has set for 2070. So there is a higher leeway that we have in terms of achieving that target. Again, I must emphasize, having said that, our per capita emission is pretty much far, far lesser as compared to US and EU. Now, in a situation where EU has to meet its nationally determined contributions, it needs to make sure that its sectors are progressively subject to emission reduction obligations. Now, EU has a law in place, it's been in place since 2005, which is the EU emission trading system. And that was EU's response towards its UNFCCC commitments. And again, EU, as you know, is a diverse economy with countries with different historical contributions for across its member states. So the EU ETS that was put in place is a market-based mechanism. It's a cap and trade mechanism. It puts a cap on emissions in the sectors that it covers. The ETS covers a variety of GHG gases, greenhouse gases, ranging from carbon dioxide to nitrous oxide to perfluorocarbons. It focuses on energy-intensive sectors, including oil refineries, steel works, iron, aluminum, metals, etc. Now, what is happening is that within the capped emissions, so far, each EU member state was receiving emission allowances in proportion of its historical share of emissions, and they were allowed to allocate allowances for free for certain sectors. But when a country is assuming higher emission reduction obligations, it necessarily has to reduce the proportion of the free allowances that its sectors are entitled to. So now the EU ETS reform that has been set in motion is aiming at completely eliminating these free allowances for sectors. It was giving free allowances to practically all the energy intensive sectors. And all of that is going to be progressively reduced from 2026 to 2035. So by 2035, the entire set of free allowances will become zero. Now, at this time, what it essentially means is that these sectors, therefore, to remain competitive, they are not going to get free allowances from the EU anymore. They're going to be facing imports that are coming into the EU. There are certainly competitiveness concerns on how to face this. At the same time, EU has the overarching fear that there could be carbon leakage, meaning that if its own emission reduction obligations are higher, countries, entities, industries are going to move out of the EU towards regulatory regimes which are more flexible, which are more lax. So in order to address all of this, what EU suggested has come up with, I wouldn't say suggested, it has mandated this carbon border adjustment mechanism, whereby from 2026 January onwards, any imports coming into the EU in 5 identified sectors. And what are those sectors? It's iron and steel, aluminium, chemicals, including hydrogen, fertilizers, and electricity. So to begin with, in these 5 sectors, as and when imports come into the EU, they'll have to purchase CBAM certificates or carbon border adjustment measure certificates. Now, the price of that is calculated based on the price of EU ETS's allowance. In other words, which is basically euro per ton of carbon dioxide emitted. So based on the embedded carbon dioxide in the imports coming in these 5 sectors, there will have to be, to equalize the price that is paid in EU, the importer will need to purchase a carbon border adjustment measure certificate or a CBAM certificate. Of course, what EU says is that if you have paid carbon price in your country, that can be reduced. So how is all of this going to be done? How is an industry entity that is exporting to the EU, how is it going to measure the embedded carbon? That means the carbon dioxide that is embedded in the during the production process. And how is it going to calculate how much of carbon price has been paid within India? And what is the kind of data that is going to be submitted to achieve all of this? Now, that is where the issue of putting in place newer mechanisms, being prepared for this eventuality really comes in. What EU has also done, as I mentioned, there are 2 important dates. The first important date for industry and all the consultants present at this webinar is concerned, it is the 1st of October 2023, which is called the transition phase. Now, in this transition phase, you don't need to purchase CBAM certificates, but we are required to provide to the EU for any kind of imports in any of these sectors, details regarding the data on the embedded emissions in these products, which have to be accurately collated with justification, evidence relating to the carbon price that is paid in India, and then get the required verification by a EU accredited agency as far as the certification of the embedded emission is concerned. Now, this is exactly what is something which will entitle entry into the EU market. And with this data from the 1st of January 2026, the CBAM certificate purchase obligation will become a precondition for being imported into the EU. Another important aspect to remember is that by the end of the transition phase, that is by 31st December 2025, EU is going to make an assessment on whether there will be an expansion beyond these 5 sectors, including whether downstream products, that means products manufactured with any of these 5 or any further sectoral categorizations will need to be made. That is something we'll know for sure only by the end of December 2025. But as of now, it is these 5 that we are concerned with. And among these, the rough estimation that has been made is that it is exports of iron and steel and aluminium into the EU that are primarily going to be impacted in the first stage. Now, if you actually look at it, one doesn't need to be a lawyer to figure out that there is certainly something that is morally and conceptually wrong with this kind of a unilateral approach. Because what the EU is doing is that, basically saying that irrespective of what the UNFCCC is saying, forget what the UNFCCC NDCs are. If you want to come to my market, you have to have the same level of climate ambition and emission reduction that EU has. There is absolutely no talk here of financial transfer or technology transfer, etc. Whatever amount goes into the purchase of carbon border adjustment measure certificate or CBAM certificates will go into the EU budget. So in other words, this actually becomes a really strange and bizarre case of reverse financing. So instead of money coming from developed countries into developing countries, any country, including a developing country like India, exporting to the EU has to pay money into the EU kitty before getting an entry into their market. So it raises several concerns in terms of the ethics, the legality, and the conceptual basis for this kind of a measure in the first place. Clearly, I can say, to put it very simplistically, this measure violates the UNFCCC principles of common but differentiated responsibilities and differential NDCs for different countries. It also violates trade principles under the WTO as well. Any kind of product differentiation based on whatever is embedded into the product under current WTO jurisprudence will not withstand scrutiny. Unfortunately, however, legal battles are something which will take a longer time to fight out and crystallize, particularly at the WTO, where the dispute settlement mechanism itself is in a very, very shaky footing right now as we speak. There is no second tier or appellate body structure to actually lead to enforceability of WTO dispute settlement rulings. So looking for a solution through that route is not something which India has the luxury to live with. So in terms of imperatives for the industry representatives that are here, of course, the battles have to be fought at multiple levels. One is, of course, through the diplomatic channels with the government to urge the government to resolve this issue, given that, given India's rising strategic importance globally and that we are part of so many, agreements and negotiations with various countries, whether that can be used as a leverage for asserting some kind of an exemption from this measure altogether. So that's, of course, the best case scenario, but also one of the most difficult to achieve with any concrete expectation of success in a short period of time. So in other words, what really is more urgent is preparedness. And that is where I think all the consultants in this room have a huge role to play in deciphering the technicalities of the regulation and ensuring capacity building of the industry to put together in place the manner in which compliance can really occur, whether it is data collection, whether it is looking at a calculation of the price of embedded carbon, what are the aspects that have to be taken into account, what sort of records have to be put into place, and then of course liaising with the accredited agency for the certification of the entire process itself. Of course, again, needless to say, support from the government for MSMEs, for Indian industry to the extent possible to ensure compliance, because obviously none of this is going to be cheap. So there is going to be a compliance cost which needs to be defrayed as well. Ultimately, at the end of the day, there is another very important aspect to keep in mind that India is negotiating, the government is negotiating free trade agreements with the EU. UK also is looking at a very similar measure. In fact, they floated a paper late last year for a UK CBAM as well. There are other countries, Japan, Canada, which are likely to come up with similar measures. So it's not a battle which is EU-centric alone. This is something which needs to be addressed across the board. But in the meantime, while a lot of the legal issues will continue to be worked out and the industry needs to be aware and put pressure on the government to address it in a proactive way, it is also time equally to start getting prepared and to start ensuring that we do not lose out on a good market because of this measure. So with these thoughts, I will hand it over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for that sharing the wonderful insights about the legal compliance to the global regulations and also the latest updates, what you have given as a tip to all the consultants here, and what are all the things which needs to be taken into consideration while implementing all this, and also helping the industry to comply with all the various regulations as per the various global agreements what we have with the other countries. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. Now I am having pleasure to introduce Sri Lalit Yadav ji, and who is the from Bureau of Indian Standards. And, today his topic, his overview of the sustainability standards, national and international, to protect environment, G20 goals. And Lalit ji is a highly skilled and accomplished professional who currently serves as an Assistant Director, Management System Certification Department at the Bureau of Indian Standards in New Delhi. Prior to this role, Lalit ji held the position of Manager, Environment and Sustainability at Tata Steel Limited. He is a Bachelor of Technology in Environmental Engineering with a minor degree in Mining Engineering from the prestigious IIT in Dhanbad, and won gold medals and awards for his outstanding achievements. Also pursued a postgraduate diploma in environmental law and policy from the renowned National Law University in New Delhi, and expertise in areas such as ESG, environmental, social and governance, sustainability, green standards, life cycle assessment, management system certification, compliance management. He is a lead auditor for various certification programs and standards, including ISO 50001 Energy Management System and ISO 45001 Occupational Health and Safety Management System and Laboratory Quality Management Systems. So over to you, Lalit ji. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, sir. Good afternoon, all. I will be sharing my screen.
Ramkumar sir,
Yes, madam.
just please ask all the speakers to turn on the video so that we can take this thing. Anuradha ma'am will be leaving in 10 minutes time.
Yeah. No, I request all the panelists to switch on the video so that we can take a
Ruby,
snap.
request Ruby also.
Yeah, just now. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Lalit ji, over to you.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Is my screen visible, sir?
Yeah, it's visible. Yes, you have to just go on to the slideshow mode. Yeah, it's okay now.
Good afternoon, all. So in this presentation, I will be briefly covering the concept of sustainability, sustainable development goals, and how Indian and international standards can help to achieve those goals. So today we are celebrating World Environment Day. This year's theme is Beat Plastic Pollution. And this theme reminds us of the urgent need to address one of the most pressing environmental challenges of our time, that is plastic pollution. Plastic pollution has become a global crisis, infiltrating our oceans, rivers, forests, and even our bodies. So I'll start my presentation with a very popular Native American proverb, that is, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. This line, this proverb tells us the importance of sustainability in our life. And we have the classical definition of the sustainability as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So this was given in 1987 in United Nations World Commission of Development and Environment. Also in Brundtland Commission. It brings three elements into harmony, that is economy, society, and environment. Many of you must remember it is also called as the triple bottom line framework. that measures a business success in 3 key areas, that is profit, people, and the planet. Why sustainability? So we have a famous quote from 𝗚𝗏𝐿 Schumacher. He was a British German statistical and economist. In his word, infinite growth of material consumption in a finite world is impossible. So nowadays, as we realize how much more we are capable of, we seek growth. We seek better outcomes and situation. We seek development. We seek more and more and more. And these desired may be of varying manner and forms, but one thing is for sure, that they are infinite. But while wants are infinite, resources and means are not. So sustainability becomes a very important concept. Then comes the sustainable development. The development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So it is based on the 5 key elements that lead to the development of SDGs. First is the people, and poverty and hunger in all forms. Prosperity, ensure prosperous and fulfilling lives in harmony with nature. Peace, foster peaceful, just and inclusive society. Partnership, implement the agenda. And the planet, protect our planet, so natural resources and climate for future generations. Also, these 5 keys highlight how the SDGs are an intertwined framework instead of a solo goal. So this slide is a little bit about the sustainable development goals. So on September 25, 2015, heads of state and United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, set up collection of 17 goals known as Sustainable Development Goals, or simply the global goals. These are actually the successors of Millennium Development Goal that we before had. The SDGs and their 169 targets are from the co-resolution of 17.1 of United Nations, which is a breakthrough agreement called Agenda 2030. The goals are to be achieved by year 2030. They are a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure all people enjoy peace and prosperity. The goals are broad, interdependent, and cover social, economical, and social economical issues, and making them work is everyone's responsibility. So these are the 17 sustainable development goals. In this slide, I will be covering major SDGs and how national and international standards can help to achieve these goals. So the sustainability standards are the voluntary guidelines used by the producers, manufacturers, traders, retailers, and service providers to demonstrate their commitment to good environmental, social, ethical, and food safety practices. It trend started in the late 1980s and 90s with the introduction of eco labels and standards for organic foods. And these are developed by a broad range of stakeholders and experts in a particular sector and include a set of practice or criteria. Example, sustainability grown crop, ethically harvested resources, protection of marine biodiversity, etc. These are generally accompanied by a verification process, often referred as certification, to evaluate compliance and traceability. So this is about the ISO and SDGs. ISO has published more than 22,000 international standards, and ISO contributes to all the SDGs. Here you can see the number of ISO standards that are directly applicable to each goals. So I will be starting with the goal number 2, that is zero hunger. So in food production sectors, we have total 1600 ISO standards. These are designed to create confidence in food product, improve agriculture methods, and promote sustainable and ethical purchasing. There are other areas including nutrition and safety testing, quality, packaging, and traceability. Then we have ISO 22000. I think all management system consultants know about this standard, FSMS, requirement for any organization in the food chain. And the family of standard on food safety management help organization to identify and control food safety hazards. Then in zero hunger, we have ISO 20400, that is for sustainable procurement. This standard encourages socially responsible behavior and ethical working conditions for agriculture workers and promote ethical purchasing practices through the entire food production chain. Then we have the standard ISO 26000. This is for social responsibility for the business and organization committed to operating in a socially responsible way. Then comes the goal number 3, that is good health and well-being. So access to quality healthcare is an essential human right. BIS as well as ISO has numerous standards supporting safe quality medical practices and equipments that helps healthcare providers deliver a more reliable and effective service. We have ISO 11137, that is series of sterilization for healthcare products. Then we have ISO 13485. It is another management system standard, that is medical devices management system, which increases efficiency, cut cost, and monitor supply chain performance. Then we have an indigenous standard, that is IS 23485. This is for, again, medical devices, quality management system requirement and essential principles and safety performance of medical devices. It has been formulated by the amalgamation of the ISO standard and ISO standard 13485, 16142 part 1 and 16142 part 2. Then we have the very famous, or what we say, the very prevalent occupational health and safety management system. It is ISO 45001. Then comes the goal number 4, quality education. This is another management system certification, that is educational organization management system, ISO 21001. Recognizing the importance of quality education for all, this is the first ever management system standard for education. It is aimed at improving the processes and quality of educational institutions to address the needs and expectations of those who use their services. Then in the clean water and sanitation, we have our indigenous standard developed by BIS, that is IS 17482, drinking water supply management system. It is an indigenous standard developed by BIS. They specify the requirement for management system of drinking water suppliers for the assessment of pipe drinking water supply services, where the water supply utility, ensuring that the water utility is able to provide a continuous supply of drinking water, and ensuring that the service provided as well as the water quality is up to mark. Then we have ISO 24518 for the communities managing their drinking water and wastewater services in event of a crisis. Then we have ISO 24521 that gives practical guidance on management and maintenance of basic on-site domestic wastewater services. Then we have for water footprints, that is ISO 14046, environmental management, water footprint, principle, requirement, and guidelines. The standard specify principle, requirement, and guidelines related to water footprint, assessment of products, processes, and organization based on the life cycle assessment. Then in series of the management system standard, we also have some product standards, that is requirement for water efficient plumbing products. We have an Indian standard IS 17650, which has been published in 2 parts to cover additional requirement for sanitary ware and sanitary fittings for their performance as well as a water efficiency plumbing product. It covers the criteria for water efficiency rating and labeling for such product based on their flush volume and flow rates. The products can be rated as either 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star. So part 1 include the sanitary ware, which are water closets, squatting pans, flushing systems, flush valves, and urinals. And the part 2 include the fittings, which are for faucets, taps, lavatory faucets, and shower heads, etc. Then we have the affordable and clean energy. Both BIS and ISO have more than 200 standards related to energy efficiency and renewable, and many more are under development. First is the ISO 50001, that is energy management system, requirement with guidance for use, help organization for all kind to use energy more efficiently through the development and implementation of energy management system. And we also have the ISO 52000 series of standard for the energy performance of building, and is expected to help the construction industry attain energy efficiency improvements. In addition to ISO portfolio boasts a number of standards in support of solar energy, such as ISO 9806. And we also have a ISO 17225 series, which determines the specification and fuel quality classes of solid biofuels. Then we have the standard for wind energy, solar energy, hydraulic performance of hydraulic turbines. Another important concept in this we have is e-mobility, that is adoption of EVs. It is the key to ensure cleaner environment by reduction of the vehicular emission and noise. Standard on chargers of EV and vehicles to grid communication interface to enable faster adoption of EV in India. So we have IS 17070 series electric vehicle conductive charging system provide guidance to industry for setting up charging stations. And we also have ISO 15118 series, that is road vehicles vehicle to grid communication interface. This specify the communication between electric vehicles, including battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and electric vehicle supply equipment, EVSEs. Then we have goal number 12 for responsible consumption and production. So we as explained, we have the standard ISO 24400 for sustainable procurement. We also have a ISO 14020 for environmental labeling, provide guideline principle for the development and use of environmental labels and self-declarations, as well as preparing for third-party certification programs. We also have the ISO 15392 for sustainability in building construction, ISO 20245 for sustainable life cycle choices, and another important standard which I wanted to discuss was for biofertilizers. It is important that we understand the difference between biofertilizers and the organic fertilizers. So it has a variety of benefits. So they take nitrogen from the atmosphere and phosphate from the soil and turn them into forms that plant can use and increases the yield due to soil fertility. So what are biofertilizers? It are substances containing variety of microbes having the capacity to enhance plant nutrient uptake by colonizing the rhizosphere and make the nutrients easily acceptable to plant root hairs. So we have IS 17134 for liquid-based rhizobium inoculants, IS 17135 for Azotobacter supplement inoculants. We have 17136 for liquid-based Agerospirillum inoculant. We have 17137 for liquid-based phosphate solubilizing bacteria inoculant, PSBI. We are also having a eco-mark scheme similar to eco-label. It is a scheme for labeling environmental friendly products. The scheme was introduced by the MOFCC and it is being administered by the BIS. Products certified as eligible for eco mark shall also carry the ISI mark, except for the leather and textile for quality, safety and performance of the product, and shall be licensed to carry the eco mark. In case of leather and textile, there are standards exclusively for eco criteria based on which only eco mark license can be issued without ISI mark license. So the presence of eco logo along with ISI mark on product indicates that the product meets certain environmental criteria along with quality requirement as specified in the relevant Indian standards. This is the logo of eco mark, that is a earthen pot with ISI mark. So we have the product category, and there are 17 product categories which are displayed on the screen, which include the soaps and detergent, lubricant oils, batteries, food additives, aerosol propellant, coil products, leather, textile, plastic products, etc. Then we have the goal number 13, climate action. So the complete, if we see the complete ISO 14000 series of standard, we have for environmental management standard that details the practical tools for organization to manage the impact of their activities on the environment. First and important is ISO 14001 that we all are aware is of environmental management system. It provides requirement with guidance for use, covers overall framework, audits, communication, labeling, life cycle analysis, and methods to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Then we have 14064 series for the quantification, monitoring, validation, and verification of GHGs. 14065 series for the guidance for quantifying and reporting the carbon footprint of products. Then we have 14087, which gives a framework to develop consistent, comparable, and improved methodology to fight against climate change. Then we have the ISO Guide 84, guidelines for addressing climate change and standards, and aimed at those who are involved in standard development. Then we have the goal number 15, life on land. So we have a technical regulation 14055, again from the 14,000 series, guidelines for establishing good practices for combating land degradation and desertification. It is a welcome addition in the ISO 14,000 series for environmental management. Another area for focus for ISO is sustainable forestry. The standard is ISO 38200. This includes the chain of custody of woods and wood-based products, promotes traceability in the wood supply chain by encouraging greater use of wood from sustainable sources, and is essential tool for helping to combat illegal deforestation. Another important standard that I wanted to discuss, which is related to SDG 13, that is climate change, and SDG 15, that is the life on land. It is the straw management system. In the recent year, we have seen the several cases of stubble burning in the areas of Punjab and Haryana, which are the significant source of pollution for Delhi. So initially, combined harvester they use, which will help in harvesting the crop along with collection of food grains. However, it leaves the stubble in the field. So we have a straw management system, SMS, which is a auxiliary equipment which is attached to the combined harvester machine and cuts the straw into small pieces and spread the same in the field itself. So there is no need to burn it to get rid of it. So with this, farmers are not required to burn the paddy straw before sowing the next crop. And this results is only one process for both harvesting of crop and management of the stubble, which helps in the prevention of air pollution. So the standard is IS 15806, harvester combined with SMS. It covers the performance requirement of the straw reaper combined machine. So this was all about. I also have an additional slide. I think, so this is what Jyotsna ma'am was talking about. IS 26001, that is for corporate social responsibility requirements. So BIS has envisaged the CSR requirement standard as one of the foremost standard being developed by India to be positioned at global level. So the innovativeness of the standards lies in the unique set of principles and parameters that will assess the measurement of performance of companies. The formulation process of the standard ensures that the contemporary discourses on CSR and SDGs are well reflected and aligned to confirm its global relevance. Then we have the IS 26002 series, that is assurance engagement. Part 1 is about the conducting assurance engagement for all methods other than statutory and financially. Then we have part 2 for the guide. This is the guidance standard. And part 3 is for competence of individuals who are conducting these assurance engagement activities. So this is all from my side. Thank you. Thank you for being a patient listener. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lalit ji, for that wonderful presentation. You have really mapped all the sustainability development goals with the standards which is available, and so that it has become a ready reckoner for all the consultants here to just have a correlation between the SDGs and also the relevant IS standards as well as ISO standards. Thank you very much for that presentation, Lalit ji. Now I call upon 𝗚𝗶𝐶𝐶 Lambert, Siti Lubia Lambert, who is an Associate Economic Affairs Officer of UNCTAD, who was all the way participated here from Singapore. We welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of CCC. And a short introduction about her. So she is an associate economic affairs officer at UNCTAD and secretariat advisor of the United Nations Forum on Sustainability Standards, UNFSS. And she has specialized in the area of work concerning the sustainability standards and its economic impact on international trade and global value chains. And she has served as an advisor to the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC), where she has published a compendium of sustainability standards best practices. And she holds an interdisciplinary social sciences master's degree, specializing in standardization, social regulation, and sustainable development, and awarded from the University of Geneva, Switzerland, in collaboration with the International Organization for Standardization, ISO. So she is going to share her thought process on private sustainability standards and certifications. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramkumar. Thank you, Rama. Thank you to all fellow panelists today. It is really a pleasure for me to be here with you, especially to celebrate this World Environment Day. I am indeed from Singapore originally, but I'm based in Switzerland in the Palais des Nations in the United Nations Palais des Nations in Geneva. I'm going to be sharing my screen. 1 second. I hope you can see.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a good.
It's
okay.
okay. It's okay.
So my name is Ruby, and thank you very much for your kind introduction. I understand that Lalit earlier has very nicely put together a presentation about ISO, and I think there are many different types of standards. I believe you will see that later in my slide. And apart from process and management standards, there's also a very specific towards product standards where I'm coming from. Well, I'm going to be speaking about voluntary sustainability standards. I understand also with our Indian counterparts, particularly represented by the Quality Council of India, that they have indeed put a specification that it is a private sustainability standards, though on our side in the global purview, we use VSS. For this round of presentation, I'm going to be using PSS, but in case you see both VSS and PSS, just understand that, you know, they can be used interchangeably. So just very briefly, you know, just sharing with you where I'm coming from. So I'm also the advisor for the United Nations Forum on Sustainability Standards. This is essentially an initiative of 6 United Nations agencies represented by FAO, the ITC, UNCTAD, UNECE, UN Environment Program, and UNIDO, where UNCTAD, we are the secretariat of this initiative. So in essence, UNFSS is a platform that systematically conducts analytical, empirical, and capacity building activities in the field of sustainability, PSS, private sustainability standards, in order to provide adequate and non-biased information about these standards globally. Its mandate rests with the Sustainable Development Goals through global trade. Just as a caveat, we in UNFSS, we do not develop standards, but we are aware of all the standards that are in the market today and how it has become a market reality, and particularly through addressing challenges that most developing countries tend to face. So what I'm going to be speaking about is mostly to introduce what PSS are, how they work, what are some of the adoption opportunities for smallholders and SMEs. I'm going to be speaking particularly on that regards, the adoption challenges, and also what role does multi-stakeholder cooperation have in order to make this standards work, especially for developing countries and the smallholders and SMEs, which is where my work is predominantly concentrated around. So in a nutshell, just a quick definition about what PSS is. They are standards, and they are standards that specifies the requirements that producers, traders, manufacturers, retailers, or even the service providers along the supply chain that may be asked to meet relating to a wide range of sustainability metrics, including respect for basic human rights, workers' health and safety, the environmental impacts of production, community relations, land use planning, among others. I'm sure you have seen some of these standards, these labels. One of them that is particularly known in India, it's GOTS. It's mostly for the cotton, for the textile sector. What we did know also, the fact that these standards, they are voluntary in nature. They are private standards, mostly developed by the private entities. We do know that many consumers, especially in the Europe, today they are very concerned about the environmental, especially social issues that are happening as well around the world. And they do want to find ways where they can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of them is through their purchasing thought process. So with these labels, technically, it gives some kind of a seal of approval for these products to show that they are produced sustainably, for example. It also provides some kind of market access. For example, in the EU, some of the products that are being imported needs to follow some of the sustainability standards. So it gives a market access for some of the products from the producer countries. It is also sort of a marketing tool in the sense that you can put some quality into quality labels. So you can put some form of marketing strategy around how products are being produced. And in some cases, some of these labels, some of these standards do have a price premium mechanism where the benefits, where the income that comes from the selling price of these products can also go into the community development of the producers, especially in developing countries. Like I said, it has become a market reality ever since, especially since the 1990s. And this is some of the numbers of the sustainability standards, especially when we look at the Eco-Label Index, where there is a list of all the Eco-Label and sustainability standards, and also through the ITC standards map. There are almost 500 of them available today all over the world. Why? Because there is a growing consumer awareness about social and environmental issues. There is also firms' motivation, such as brand protection, price premium, and also mainly for market access. There is also the reaction to the emergence of other types of VSSs, and some of them it's also the regulatory side, where the panelists have earlier talked about as well, you know, where we talk about the CBAM, the due diligence, you know, some of these EU interactions with sustainability standards from a regulatory perspective. This is also a reaction to failures of multilateral regulatory efforts, and that there are more and more governments that are engaging with VSS. So there has been a growing number of sustainability standards, but there is also a stagnation from the 2000s. And most of the sustainability standards are mostly concentrated on a few sectors, and the sectors are agriculture, also processed foods, textiles and garments, livestock, to some extent, some aquaculture, wild capture in the fisheries, forestries as well. So that's what I was saying, that this the number of all the VSSs there are, it's that they are mostly concentrated in a limited number of sectors, and they are the agriculture, food commodities, textiles, and forestries. So I'm just going to go through this very quickly. I think it's also good to know how this kind of standards, that how it works and what kind of mechanisms that come into practice. Is that the first stage of the formulation, it comes actually from general principles or based on inter alia international treaties and conventions, such as the International Labor Organization Convention on Human Rights. There are also from the UNFCCC. So there are many of these. So they are sort of general principles, but often these general principles are really top line. So what happens is that the second stage is that they need to refine those big general principles to develop a more specific standards and criteria. So then with the standards and criteria, they can then operationalize it as a standard, where the criteria are known through some kind of measurable indicators. So if you meet, so companies that meet these indicators, they will be awarded with the certification. But usually, I mean, this is in a nutshell how the setting of sustainability standards is, but usually it's more complex than that, which I'm going to be speaking about later. So just like Lalit's presentation, we did also link the voluntary sustainability standards, or the PSS, to the SDGs. So we did a study on VSS landscape based on 232 VSSs all around the globe. In that 232, we found 800 requirements in total. So out of that 800 requirements, 508 of those requirements actually linked to 16 SDGs, which are about 55 targets. And so what we, at the end of the day, what we also see is that for the agenda, for the 2030 agenda, 17 SDGs, there are a total of 169 targets. And that's where we find that linkages between the sustainability standards and the SDGs. And here are the results. We do see that many of the requirements tend to target SDG 8, SDG 12, which is decent work and economic growth. SDG 12, that would be responsible consumption and production. There is also SDG 2, which is to meet zero hunger, and also life on land, SDG 15. So in order to steer these conversations, I think it's also good to know what are some of the opportunities of voluntary private sustainability standards when it comes to the adoption opportunities for smallholders and SMEs. I'm mentioning smallholders and SMEs, particularly because the large share of the standards are concentrated around agriculture, and that agriculture is particularly pertinent in developing countries, and the largest share of the workers in this sector tend to be smallholders, producers, and also SMEs. So what is the opportunities? I think I have mentioned briefly that there comes with a price premium. There is an enhanced competitiveness, brand protection, and increased demand, sort of a reduced transaction cost through harmonization, mutual recognition, in the sense that when you look at one standards that applies across the globe, you will talk the same languages, whether you're in the EU or in Indonesia, or so the idea is that when these standards or the application talks the same languages, it reduces the transaction cost. It also reduces institutional and development gaps between trading partners, and that it also gives sort of a higher access to finance, because investors today are willing to invest more in sustainability standards compliant producers. And in a nutshell, it does address the multi-dimensional aspects of sustainability, which is the economy, society, and the environment. It is well documented that the worst case scenarios in many of the business related human rights violations is that it happens to occur in developing countries, which is also why the uptake of voluntary sustainability standards is really increasing in importance and relevance, particularly in developing countries. But it's not always as easy as it may sound, because there seems to be also some adoption challenges when it comes to the adoption in the uptake in developing countries. Some of the questions that we find where it challenges producers and SMEs in developing countries is that the question about who benefits at the end of the day. There is a challenge with the power imbalances. Is it a standard that it's applied from the developed countries imposed on the developing countries? So there is that idea of imposition. There is also a proliferation of these standards, and I think I showed this in the graph earlier. There is a growing number of voluntary sustainability standards across the globe. Like even for forestry, you have more than one, you have many different types of sustainability standards. So this proliferation actually becomes a challenge, because it creates some kind of confusion, especially for smallholder producers in developing countries. When you have so many information, you don't know which ones to choose, and then it creates a problem. There is also issues around applicability, whether or not these international standards are applicable for the settings in developing countries. I think we also know that to be certified, it can be very costly. So that already in itself creates a distortionary effect. In some cases, it's a lack of incentives. For example, some products may not really require sustainability standards because the buyers do not really see the importance. So there is a lack of incentives, especially for smallholder producers, to invest in sustainability standards, certification processes. There are also an opposition towards VSSs and low capacity to comply, such as knowledge gap and governance gaps. I'm going to be finishing soon, but in a nutshell, what we do at the UNFSS, it's really to steer or facilitate multi-stakeholder cooperation. And we do this in three manners. Firstly, it's to do to obviously have research and analysis first. Also support the national platforms, which are usually represented by the countries themselves in the developing and the emerging markets. And also to hold informed policy dialogue, where the idea is to bring the North and the South into one room and discuss some of these challenges about the uptake of voluntary sustainability standards. Just very quickly, this is some of the countries' representation that is currently working with us. And as you can see here, there is Quality Council of India that works very closely with us. So just these two last slides, I just want to conclude in terms of why or how we can make PSS work, especially for developing countries. How it's that this hold on to multi-stakeholder approach is that it gives the emphasis that governments should be firstly driving this transformational changes. Private standards like the VSS can assist the government to promote a holistic growth policy. So rather than businesses themselves take on individual actions, there is the governments as well can join forces with the private sector and also the civil society to reap the sustainability standards of VSS. How? To facilitate dialogues, economic policy dialogues. Secondly, to adapt external standards to domestic conditions. Thirdly, to extend international networking and collaborations. Fourth, it's to have knowledge sharing, exchanges, workshops, or dialogues. And last but not least, it's to link policy making with the research and analysis, which is also something that some of the things that we do very closely with the countries that we work with. And last but not least, those are the countries level. And now how do we make them actually work for the smallholders and producers and SMEs? Firstly, it's to look at the current business contracts and encourage the adoption. Secondly, it's to that the way these requirements are being conveyed should be simple and easy. Thirdly, there needs to be infrastructure and institutions that supports this adoption, which is why we work very closely with the Quality Council of India in that sense. Producers are well organized. There is a need to support this adoption provided by businesses, development partners, or even governments. And last but not least, that this standards, the certification in itself, it has sustainability objectives that must be relevant to the local communities themselves. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for your listening, and I take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruby madam, for that. For providing an insight into the private sustainability standards and also the certifications and the importance of adoption of PSS by the smallholders and the SMEs, which is very much relevant to a developing country like ours. And it is very much already PSS has started implementing their certifications and standard certifications here in India, like Better Cotton Initiative and other private sustainability standards are already on, and still more, your presentation has given more awareness among the consultants about the PSS and the relevance of these sustainability standards in the current scenario. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you. I request all the panelists to just switch on the video for a minute to take a snapshot of all of the panelists. Thank you. Can you please switch on your video? Lalitji, you can also switch on your video for a minute so that we can take a snapshot. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. So now we are moving on to the next topic of today's session. Let me introduce the speaker, Ms. Pallavi Atre, who is a senior sustainability expert from GRI South Asia, and she's having a 15+ years experience in sustainability, helping organizations integrate concepts through consulting and advocacy. And our areas of focus have been corporate sustainability, sustainability reporting, carbon accounting, business relevance to sustainability development goals, supply chain sustainability, impact assessment and knowledge building across India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Singapore, and Malaysia. At GRI, responsible for driving uptake of GRI standards to build the ecosystem of transparency that includes large businesses, SMEs, stock exchanges, regulators, etc. And she has conducted assessment of 10+ enterprises and delivered 100+ knowledge building sessions on topics including climate change, water, waste, gender, culture of health, and more. And she has managed consulting engagements on sustainability reporting, CDM carbon reduction, environmental impact assessments, environmental statements, stakeholder engagement, sustainability tool implementation, and more. And she has co-authored publications with prestigious institutions like India's BRSR GRI Standards Linkage Document and Bangladesh's first private sector SDG Impact Report. And she is a secondment from Tata Consultancy Services. At TCS, she has been involved in APAC strategic initiatives such as TCS APAC, carbon neutrality, and mobile app and sustainability for 500K employees. And also she is a certified sustainability professional, masters in environmental management, and a certified lead auditor in ISO 14001 and ISO 45001, which is occupational health and safety and management systems. So I heartily welcome 𝗚𝗏𝗏 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗏 ma'am for this World Environment Day session. And her topic of presentation will be ESG reporting framework to measure sustainability initiatives. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramkumar. I was not aware that you're going to read my profile. Sorry for being so lengthy. But yeah, thank you so much for kind introduction. I hope I'm clearly audible.
Yeah, you are audible, ma'am.
Yes, you are, Pallavi. Yes.
Thank you so much for confirming. Okay, so I'll be sharing a deck which I have. Just let me know once it appears on the screen. I think my screen is visible.
The screen is visible. Yeah,
Yes,
screen
yes,
is
yes.
visible. Yeah.
So is this okay? Like it's is this okay view?
Yeah, this is you.
No, my
Better to see
PPT
the-
is not it. Just a minute. Sorry for the glitch. Yeah. All right. So happy World Environment Day to everyone. So I've been in this space for 15 years, and celebrating this day has been like a routine for me. But I have seen space changed over a period, and I'm quite happy the way it's being evolved over the period. Now the screen, my screen hopefully
it's
should
visible,
be
madam.
visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go.
So see, this topic that I have been given, I would definitely share, like to share a few insights around it. I represent Global Reporting Initiative. For those of you who have been hearing about GRI, which is also called as, know the full form. They're headquartered in Netherlands, although, however, for past 10 years, I represent also the GRI South Asia Hub, which is located in Delhi and Mumbai. So I am speaking to you from Mumbai today, and my other colleagues which includes Dr. Aditi Haldar, who is Director GRI South Asia, and we have 3 more colleagues, are in Delhi. So we have been extensively working in the space and have been ears and eyes for GRI headquarters from this region, which is, we look after South Asia region. I have purposely put this slide together because the topic given to me is so broad. And if you see today all over, the ESG reporting framework and standard, it's nothing but, a soup of all these jargons. And while I say this, I also noticed that my profile, which was Mr. Ramkumar just, introduced me on, the profiles also had a lot of jargon. Sorry for that. So I meant there was a mention of APAC, and it was nothing but Asia Pacific. So we are living in a world of jargon, and we are seeing all over these jargons and lost many a times as to which standards to be used. So while I represent GRI, is a disclosure standard, and it's a sustainability reporting standard. We call it as, the only reporting standards in the world. Earlier, it was in a form of a guidelines. It gradually evolved in 2016 in a form of a standard. And before I get into, how these standards look like, and also I'll be talking a bit about what is global trend looking like, and, the future looking like in terms of these reporting framework, I would just want to introduce our organization. So we are an independent international organization, and our main aim is that how the reporting of sustainability information could be a global common language. So be it any part of the world, any language being spoken in the part of the world, and any size of the organization, how can we place this disclosure in a common language which is understood by the recipient of the information in a understandable way. And what disclosures and what transparency do we talk about? Then it is communication of sustainability impact of any business and organization of any sector and any size. We do it in a form of GRI standards, which is a public good freely available on the GRI website. Anybody can go and download it from the website free of charge. We are a non-profit organization, and we have kind funders across the world to help us develop these GRI standards in a very robust manner. And there is a due diligence process being extensively followed, and the transparent way everything is laid on the website for information of others as to how these standards are getting developed. We are pioneers in the space, although you see a lot of standards, regional standards, global standards, or framework being, a topic specific framework being cropping up all over the globe. We are the pioneers since 1997, and we have completed our 25 years. As I mentioned, we have evolved, based on how the need is going to be. And which also includes our certified training programs, our sector-specific standards, our academy, and our work on the on mapping SDGs to the GRI standards, or making it more and more easy for companies to report on SDGs on the relevant indicators. With that, that's how we are situated. And as I mentioned, I'm a part of South Asia in India. And we look after Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Pakistan, Bhutan is where we are actively working on. Our impact so far has been where even today, largest of the 250 companies are, and out of that, 78% of the companies are reporting using GRI sustainability standards. And this is the survey, which is based on the survey which is conducted by KPMG, after regular period across the world. Earlier in 2015, the reference of GRI standards in policies across the world was something in few hundreds. And today in 2023, there are 248 policies across 85 countries which reference or require GRI standards as their ESG or sustainability disclosure. We have unique downloads, you can see the number 900,000 up downloads of GRI standards in 2022. And today 11,000 plus companies are publishing their GRI report. We are supported by 500 plus organizations across 60 countries. And we have more than 100 training partners in 50 plus countries who are, while we speak, are actually creating a knowledge base among the sustainability practitioners on the right way of reporting. So the training partners are extremely important for us to train appropriately on the GRI standards. We've seen that in India also, the evolution of policy on reporting has been progressing over the last decade. Very closely we have been involved. We saw that it all started somewhere in 2011, where the Ministry of Corporate Affairs first came with the guidelines, right? And gradually SEBI adopted that for the BRR, which was, it used to be called as for top 100 listed companies. It extended to mandate extended to 500. And gradually we saw also the evolution in the guidelines. And in 2021, it was really commendable of the, of SEBI to mandate 1,000 listed company to disclose on ESG. And with that, they have put 1,000 listed companies under radar and have made them report on, on the ESG, on the sustainability matters. And we have been, GRI has been a part of these discussions and the consultation processes. And we saw that we also undertook an exercise to map the BRSR to GRI standards. And we saw that BRSR is highly adopted from the GRI standards. And there is already a linkage document available on the website, which shows that, if you are, if you are able to report on BRSR, then, you will also be able to report on GRI standards, which is more adopted, most popular across the world international standard. What differentiates us from many is our multi-stakeholder approach. So the standards which get developed are not only used by multi-stakeholders, but not the specific group of stakeholders, for example, investors only, but also other stakeholder groups. But at the same time, in the development of the standards also, there are these multiple stakeholder groups which are involved in. And that makes our approach very robust, and a lot of expertise that goes into the development of the standards, making it more, enhancing the comparability and quality of the information that is being reported has also been a focus of GRI across the world. This is how the standards look like. And, we have modular system. So any particular standard, if gets updated, any part of the standards get updated, the entire standard need not be updated. And that is why it's a modular system now. We recently launched the universal standard, which makes it more, user-friendly. We also have new sector standards which are coming up. And most important part of it is topic standards. There are 34 topic standards in the GRI, and which doesn't mean that every organization has to report using 34 standards, but also it has to be based on the materiality, which means the most important topics that the organization identify for reporting. This is, in-depth kind of topics that we separately deal with, but I'm just focusing, given that we have a very small time to have this conversation today. So just introducing you to all these concepts. As I mentioned, universal standards were, have been recently launched and are in effect since 1st January 2023. And it forms 3 parts: foundation, general disclosures, and material topics. The key concepts are on which it is based on, and 10 principles, the 9 principles on which it is based on the entire reporting. On today's theme of the World Environment Day, which is on the plastic pollution, I just want to bring into your attention 2 topics which are very closely related to 34 out of the 34 material topics, which are waste, which were recently in 2020, which were updated, and another one is materials, GRI 301 materials. So waste topic covers, mostly the impacts. It help organization to, disclose on waste related impacts, and how do they manage these waste related impacts. So first of all, it not only the disclosure is ultimately what it provokes the organization to disclose, which means there is a lot of background work that goes behind, right, by the organization. Only then they will be able to disclose, which is measuring and identifying the impacts, and also then measuring these impacts, and then putting in place the management of these impacts. So, okay, I identify the impact, but what do I do with these impacts? How do I manage this so that I mitigate its negative impacts and maybe enhance its positive impacts of any topic? So all these standards are designed in such a way that provokes an organization to take an action. On the topic specific disclosure under waste is, it asks very specific questions. How much is the waste generated? Then provokes you to also talk about from the type or from the point of view of type of this waste. If it is, where is it generated and what are the sources, whether it's hazardous, non-hazardous. These all kind of questions are being very straightforward asked in the standards. It also involves waste diverted from disposal, waste directed to disposal. And that way, it is encouraging organizations to take actions in a holistic manner and helping companies and organizations to move towards taking a more, more holistic approach and move towards measures on the circularity. Also the topic materials is, is asking direct questions, whereas, okay, what is a material that is being used to produce a product or provide a service? And then in that case, how much is the recycled input material? And how many reclaimed products and their packaging materials are being used? So these kind of questions and disclosures are actually provoking actions. They're actually putting companies on toes, because since I have also been involved in giving some, helping organization on how to report on these, disclosures. I see that when they see these kind of disclosures, they're actually, on their toes to, oh, where do I find this data? Okay, this year I don't have a data. How can I improve next year? So this is the power of standards, and it's a free good which is being, out there and being used by 11,000 plus companies so far. All the time standards are getting evolved. We have recently launched a couple of standards which are in the area of coal, oil and gas, and agriculture and aquaculture. We are coming up with the mining sector, textile and apparel, financial services sector specific standard, which gets into more in depth. It also gives you indicators and likely material topics that could be relevant to these particular standards. Also, upcoming standards which are biodiversity, we have labor. So far, climate has been dealt in the standard for emissions and energy related topics. They are already existing, but we are coming up with new climate specific standard, which is going to deal with larger in-depth topics, which are also going to be of the adaptation and also in terms of just transition, how can, bringing in these angles and provoking companies to report on it. And also economic performance topic standard is getting, updated while we are speaking. And there is a whole lot of a calendar which is out there. In terms of global standards, we saw that these two pillars are getting evolved, and GRI is very at the center stage with two organizations which you have been might have heard about, which is the IFRS, which has launched, which has the ISSB standard, ISSB board, which is the board actually, which is looking at the sustainability standards, and also at the EU level under the Green Deal, the EFRAG, wherein the directive under the EU deal is actually getting updated to bring in these aspects of transparency, expanding it to number of other organizations. So here are two pillars which are getting spoken about, where the sustainability or impact reporting is first pillar, where the focus is all impacts a company is having on the society and environment, and hence their contribution towards the goal of sustainable development. Okay, so the arrow goes from a company to the world, to the people and to the planet and its people. And the pillar 2, which is more financial focus, where it's spoken about, or the point of view is strengthening the financial reporting, where the focus is impact on companies, disclosures addressing the financial implication of the sustainability issues which are prevailing in the world. So these two pillars are put on the equal footing, and GRI has been involved in this discussions and making it a reality in near future. We also see that in the European reporting standards, which has now expanded to multiple organizations, we see that the large undertaking companies are, should be reporting who are greater than euro to 20 million on the balance sheet, or greater than 40 million net worth turnover, or greater than 250 employees. We also saw that under this purview, the SMEs will get covered, and this also means there is going to be an impact on the Indian organizations who have trade relations with EU. So non-EU companies with more than 150 million of operations in the EU are supposed to report using ESRS standards, and there is more than 80% of the ESRS is, standards are actually mapped to GRI standards, and GRI standards is involved in technically developing these standards for the EU companies and also beyond. These standards are, are getting into force in January 2024, and they will be forced, gradually in 2025, 2026. And most important part of it, that ESG reports based on these standards are supposed to be assured by third party or digitally tagged using XBRL, is also the plan that EU has, making the credibility of the data even higher, but at the same time puts organization in a lot of pressure to have data in place which is assured and credible and robust. GRI is, currently on the toes to meet the requirement, not only these, two very important global requirements in EU and at the IFRS level, but also at the regional levels. There are number of reporting frameworks that are coming up. So GRI can support you in number of ways. One is the training. There is online academy, which is, training professionals, and it is called as GRI Academy. There are reporting services. So once you have your report in present, in a draft stage, then we provide you the tailored reviews and guidance on your report, and to make the reporting, and how to make this process or whatever your reporting process is, to review this at your end. We have GRI community, which helps with lot of latest knowledge to the organizations who are on the reporting journey. And apart from that, we have a lot of reporting tools which are up there on the website. And one of the example which I shared with you was, first of all, the SDG, how you can report on SDG indicators using GRI standards, and also the GRI standards BRSR linkage document, which you will find on the Bombay Stock Exchange website as well as GRI's website, if you give a quick search to do this. This is what I wanted to share with you. Please reach out to me. I'm also going to put, I'm also going to share my email ID in the chat box. So please, if you have any questions, please reach out, and we are all there to, help you out.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for that presentation on ESG, particularly reporting. Reporting is a very important thing. This is part of a technical session 2, which is ESG evaluation, reporting, rating frameworks. And part of the technical session 2, again, there will be one more topic, which will be on ESG evaluation, sustainability rating programs by Ms. 𝗍𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐴𝐵. And now I call upon 𝗍𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐴𝐵 ji to share her thought process. Before that, a brief introduction about her. So she is a founder of 𝗚𝗏𝐶𝑠ky Sustainable Business LLP, the first and only accredited third-party independent inspection body for CSR projects in India, and an internationally certified social auditor with 25+ experience managing the social risk of 2 transnational retailers, Marks and Spencers and the Gap, and member of the Sustainability Board and the Subject Matter Experts Committee formed on social audit by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and subject matter expert in national and international forums on topics of social metrics, business responsibility, NGRBC, ISO 26000, ESG, and business responsibility and sustainability reporting, BRSR. And she is also a consultant to Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and CII, Confederation of Indian Industries, and ICAI, Institute for Chartered Accountants of India, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, and FICCI, FICCI. So we are very happy to welcome you, ma'am, for this wonderful session on the technical session 2, which is ESG evaluation, reporting, rating frameworks, and the topic, the thought process which you are going to share with all of us is ESG evaluation, sustainability rating programs. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all the participants who are here, and to all the respected speakers on the panel. Thank you for giving me an opportunity, Mr. Ramkumar and Ramaji. It's always, your sessions are always very interesting, and I'm very privileged to be a part of this afternoon session. Thank you so much. So today being World Environment Day, and I have been given the topic to speak about ESG and, the ESG rating systems that are going to come in. And I would like to start first and foremost to say that it's a very, very nascent and a new field. So for all the management consultants who are participating here, the first thing I want to tell you is that we are starting on it. Okay, so if somebody tells you that they have been evaluated and rated and they're the best and they're platinum and they're gold and all, take it with a little pinch of salt. Not because the rating is wrong, but we are still very new in the way that we are going to be, we are evaluating. You've heard some great speakers here from GRI, from UNCTAD. You also heard Ms. Anuradha talk about so much of discussions happening on standards, agreements, World Trade, So there are more than about 600, believe you me, there are more than about 600 different sustainability standards that we can talk about. And and all of them are quite okay. They're quite okay. They can be accepted. There's not much wrong with them. But when we are talking about ESG, remember that we still are finding the common ground. What is relevant to a organization, which is, let's say, a small organization with a turnover of 100 crores in a mining industry, might be very, very different from the requirement or the issues we are going to talk about a service industry with, let's say, 1,000 crores. So how do you really compare these two organizations is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing. Now, organizations like GRI and all are absolutely the leadership organizations who are setting the way, who are paving the way of trying to, get standard, equal, trying to get the things that we're measuring apples to apples rather than apples to pineapples or something like that. Yeah. So the rating aspect of ESG, remember, is that we are still, our body of knowledge is still in the initial stages, and we are trying to define the apples and the pineapples currently. So when you talk about rating and all that, remember, we're still in the first step. That's one thing that one of the first points I wanted to talk about when we talk about ESG ratings. The second thing that I wanted to talk about, okay, I have a slide to share. I just want to put that on. Give me a minute, please. Is that visible?
Yeah, yes, madam.
Okay. So
you can just move on to the slideshow mode.
Full screen.
Yes, full screen. Yes. So
to
all the participants who are there, I know it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the urge for getting some tea must be pretty high. And I made myself my tea before starting this lecture. So I want a lot more participation just to be sure that you are involved, and so you can answer in the thing, like you can respond, ask questions. I'd really appreciate that. Okay, so coming back to the topic that I'm talking about, if there's one thing that you want to take away from this session, from the time you have spent in this session, is understanding these three things, which is the ESG metrics, ESG disclosures, and ESG framework. Yeah. Remember, we're talking a lot about, ultimately, we are talking about BRSR and all that, which actually come as disclosures. Okay. Now, what do we disclose in these? What is it that we are going to disclose is basically the ESG metrics. So it's very important to understand that what are we measuring and what are we talking about? What is it important for my company to disclose? I can only disclose something which I'm measuring. So one of the very important things that we need to understand is ESG metrics, because that influences the quality of your disclosure. Now this, and I mean, while, like I said, this is an emerging field, and we can't say this particular framework is what works for me, or this is the best framework, or this is the only framework I'll use. Honestly, there are many frameworks that are available, and you would have to see how and what applies to you. So when you're discussing ESG, it is extremely important for you to differentiate between ESG metrics. Are you talking about metrics which you're going to disclose using a framework? Yeah. So if there's one thing that you want to understand and take away from today's session, is the difference between ESG metrics, disclosures, and framework. And this, in turn, I'll go on to explaining how these are used for the rating system. So ESG metrics are used to assess a company's exposure to a range of environmental, social, and governance risks. Metrics, as you're talking about, understand, metrics is something that you measure, okay? And disclosure refers to the disclosure of data. Like, there is one thing that, you must have heard of the word greenwashing, and then you must have heard of the terms called overstating the truth, okay? And then you might have heard about exaggerated reports. That is one of the biggest challenges and the risks that we are facing in the ESG world. So to avoid this risk of overstating the truth, I don't want to call it lying. It's a better way of saying is overstating the truth, is you have to talk about numbers which are credible and accountable. Yeah. And how do you get those numbers? By measuring what is relevant and significant to you. So measurement of the data, identifying what you're going to measure, how you're going to measure, and what you're going to disclose becomes a very important aspect, a very important decision-making thing that happens in the ESG discussion. Okay. Based on that, depending upon what you are going to measure is what you're going to disclose. And you can disclose it in 100 different ways, but maybe that's when your organization will define what are the frameworks that you're going to use to disclose. And this is where, what Ruby spoke about, many voluntary standards, what Pallavi spoke about GRI standards. That's where you're going to be sort of using that. Okay. Any questions till now? Okay. In case you have, do put it on so that we can discuss it in the next 10-15 minutes. I'm heading, the finality of my talk will be on the rating systems, but I'm just building up onto that. So this is what is the ESG framework. I mean, you can add many components to it, but you cannot delete any component from this, because this is what is exactly what we're talking about, a ESG framework. It ESG always starts with a leadership commitment. It's one of those things which comes top down. It's the leadership, the board, the committees, the ESG committees, which sort of decides what is it that we are going to commit on, okay? And remember, ESG reports, ESG disclosures are all what is expected out of business organization. Now, let's say BRSR, business responsibility and sustainability reporting. This year, the top 1,000 businesses are the ones who are bringing out their BRSR reports, yeah, disclosures. So what do they disclose on? That There are millions of things which are burning and which are requiring attention for the business. But remember that businesses are set to make a certain amount of profits, give back a certain amount of returns to the shareholders. They are not in this world for purely charitable purposes, but yes, they are supposed to be responsible businesses. They can't just, I mean, like Lalit had spoken about the definition of sustainability, you know, it can't just, the businesses can't just keep taking from the world and not giving it back. But so they have to be responsible, but they cannot address all the million issues which are burning, you know, which are seeking attention. So a responsible business has to identify what is material to them as a part of the ESG strategy. What is material to them, in very simple terms, is whatever is relevant and significant for the business to be stronger. Remember, businesses are not charitable organizations. They have to be responsible organizations. And so identifying what is relevant and significant for them. So they are business organizations. They have to be responsible. I have 100 rupees to spend. What am I going to spend that 100 rupees on to be responsible? That is what is material to them. Yeah, what is relevant and significant to them. And how do you identify what is relevant and significant to them? Definitely comes from the leadership. And once that comes into place, the ESG, you could say almost the foundation of the ESG has been laid, because you sort of identify where you develop the strategy and the policy to address those issues and keep measuring. I come back again to the metric part of it, the ESG metric part of it. So once you are got a strategy and a policy on issues which are significant and relevant to you, you perform in it and you measure and review. Okay. So that's where the ESG metrics is coming into place. Is that okay? I go to the next one. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions coming up. So I am going to the next one. Okay, so, so basically, these are the 5 steps on ESG reporting. Investigating situations. What is important to me? What is a huge risk to me? So I come from a textile industry, and just to let you know that in terms of an ESG risk, you know, when I work for Marks and Spencer, Gap Inc., one of the biggest raw materials for my business to survive was cotton. Yeah. And cotton was a water thirsty crop. Okay. So when it's a water, and we are facing a water, you know, we are literally running out of water on this world. So there was a huge acknowledgement of the fact that the future of my business depended on how I source my raw material, which is cotton, which is proving to be an environmental hazard because of the way it is grown. So, you know, as a part of our ESG strategy at Marks and Spencer, we focused very heavily on BCI cotton. We collaborated with different organizations to ensure that cotton is grown responsibly. Not, yes, because it is a good thing to do. It was what the world requires, but it also was focused, a huge focus on cotton growing was supported by Marks and Spencer, because it was a huge risk for the future of our business. Yeah. So investigating situations and avoiding ESG risks, identifying relevant issues of ESG, setting priorities. Yeah. So basically, again, cotton is grown all over the world, China, Uzbekistan, India. But since a huge portion of our production was coming from India, we focused on the cotton growing in India and then scaled it up to other countries, because there is only a certain amount of money that is available for these projects. Yeah. Remember, we are in the business. It's not something that we have an infinite amount of money. No business has. So that is why establishing these priorities become very important. And again, ultimately, it starts coming to improving performance. And how do you improve performance? By keeping your data integrity on the things that you have measured. Again, comes back to ESG metrics. Okay, so yeah, okay, I'm going to go to the next one. I'm aware of this thing. So these are all your different rating standards. Yeah, these are all the different ways that, you know, your performance is graded. Like there's EcoVadis, there's Dow Jones Sustainability, MSCI, Bloomberg. So they basically rate the performance of your ESG performance. And again, their rating now, till now, a lot of focus has been on the financial aspects of your ESG. Yeah, it's again a huge science by itself, but these rating standards have become very popular because it sort of helps the stakeholders to understand in very simple terms as to what is better or what has scored more or what has the same. But having said that, remember one thing, I would like to point out to all the management consultants saying here that these rating systems are not perfect. It is an industry by itself. Like a MSCI Sustainable Impact Index will not recognize Dow Jones Sustainability Index. Each one will try to sell their own index, and there is no a universality of acceptance is not currently available. And from my take on this whole thing is that it is also not going to be available very soon. It is not going to be available very soon because I think what Pallavi was also talking about, we are getting different sectors are starting to develop their own standards. That has to mature over the next few years before we can say that, yeah, we are all agreeing on the similar metrics for evaluating or rating a particular thing. Again, like my previous speakers have said, sustainability is not only for the top 1,000 companies. In India, by 2025, you'll see that the scope of ESG evaluation will literally come to the SMEs also. Everybody is responsible for responsible business. It can't only be the big companies. So the challenge will be more and more complex as to how do you compare the performance to give a rating on an ESG performance. Now, at this juncture, I would like to bring in the fact that BRSR, what we are seeing, the emergence of this rating that we are seeing in India is very, very interesting. I keep an eye on that. And just to flag off some very important changes or consultation which is happening, keep a track of it. I think this is abhi picture baki hai, abhi kahani baki hai wala stage hai, because we are still in the consulting period of ESG rating. So what they have done is that they have in BRSR, we will initially, when it was introduced last year, we had almost 300 odd different metrics. The number keeps changing. Somebody will tell you 300, somebody will tell you 157. But the number of metrics that has been asked of BRSR was quite huge. But now they've literally shrunk it to about 30 different metrics. And even those 30, they're saying that these 30 metrics are agnostic of the sector. Okay. So it is irrespective of which sector you're working on, these 30 metrics will be important to display your responsible business practices. And the second thing that they have done is these 30 metrics, they have tried to make it very, very measurable. Okay, numbers, quantifiable. The third very intelligent thing that is happening here is they're talking about the intensity of that measure. So if you and so they basically look at those measures against, they put it as a ratio with the amount of business revenue that you have and the type of changes that you've done. So three big things. We have reduced the amount of metrics to 30, sector agnostic. We have talked about very easily measurables. And another very interesting aspect of the rating that we are going to see coming up in India is that these ratings, these 30 measurables, in some way or the other reflect the nationally determined indicators. Yeah, some of the what you call the national development indicators which signify the development of our country. So, I mean, that's another topic by itself. So we have 30 metrics, sector agnostic, measurable, and reported in terms of their intensity. So these are the type of things that you're going to see very soon, over maybe over the next 3 to 6 months. You will have a very good introduction to ESG ratings in India. And we have the good thing about what is happening in India is that for a change, we are building on all the experiences globally. Europe has been a leader in this for a long time. We've learned from the mistakes, and yet we are going ahead and doing something which is applicable, relevant, and significant to our own country. So that's it from my side. I am aware that I have overshot my time by a little while. So over to you, 𝗚𝗍𝗏𝗲. Thank you.
Thank you for that sharing of all the related aspects about the ESG evaluation part, particularly about the ESG framework and the ESG metrics and what we have harped upon. Really,
Yeah.
I think it was a very useful information to all of our consultants who are present here. Thank you,
Thank you
madam.
so much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, with that,
I look forward to being on touch on LinkedIn. That's the best place I learn a lot. And if you have any ideas and you want to discuss, do get in touch with me on that. Thank you
Sure.
very much. Thank you.
Sure, madam. Thank you. So with that topic, the technical session 2 comes to an end. And now we are moving on to the technical session 3, which is building a bridge between financial and technical regulations. Normally, there will be always a tussle between a technocrat and a financial person. To bridge that gap, I think this topic is very relevant, which we have chosen today. And we have a good panel members who are going to join us for discussing about this topic and sharing their thought process to us. So now I call upon Mr. 𝗍𝗏𝗲𝗏, who is here amidst us. And let me briefly introduce him about Mr. 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏. Mr. 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏 is a managing partner of KSR and Co. and Company. And actually, he holds a doctorate from the Department of Management of Alagappa University on prosecution of directors under the company law and criminal law in India and UK. And he holds a diploma in electronics and radio communication engineering issued by the Indian Air Force and a diploma in technology awarded by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. And he has designed and developed new products and devised strategies relating to compliance solutions, secretarial audits, internal audit of functions and activities, and a core practitioner in corporate laws and has more than 25 years of practical experience, and renders expert opinions on legal, regulatory, and contractual issues. And he has served the Indian Air Force for more than 9 years as a specialist in Russian radar systems and was a lecturer in Commerce Department of the Government of Arunachal Pradesh at Pasighat. And he is an independent director of 𝐕𝗏𝗏 Bank Limited and presently a member of the Banking, Finance, and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, BCIC. And he is a chair for Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Committee of Assocham State Development Council. So today he is going to share his thought process about Reserve Bank of India, green financing guidelines, and what the Indian industry should know. And that's the topic he is going to share his thought process. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Very good evening to everyone and a warm welcome to this forum on this World Environment Day. And I am reminded about the definition that we saw in the 1986 Act, that environmental means it encompasses every living being. See, that is the beauty of the word. It is normally understood differently, but when we talk about environment, we understand not only the self-serving human beings class. It is more than that. With that preface, I thought I'll share my presentation. Is my PPT visible?
Yes, so full screen mode, please, sir.
Yeah, is it okay?
Yeah, clear.
Yes,
It's
sir, it
clear.
is clear, sir, now. Yeah. Thank you.
See, the state of economy is a fundamental factor in understanding the subject. And when I was referring to the sustainable and resilient finance of the OECD from the 2020 Outlook published by OECD Business and Finance Outlook. See the beauty of the statement. OECD says, in designing governance structure, we must bear in mind that the goals must be set to implementing the ESG policy. And the next sentence is very important. The distance between the person holding ultimate responsibility for the ESG matters and the board may be one of the important factors. See, what ultimately the OECD report says is board's involvement is important. It demonstrates the commitment. This is a fundamental, I will say, the premise which is necessary for every ESG or every climate change or every green financing option. We must understand what is the distance between the board and the commitment. If ESG aspects commitment is directly looked after, supervised and monitored by the board of directors, that is a first tick. I was going through the report of the Reserve Bank of India. In May 2023, there is a bulletin where there is a state of economy, there is an article. It is interesting to understand where can we put our green financing options. Big data analytics, climate change, environmental and management technologies, encryption, cyber security are expected to be the biggest drivers of growth. Agricultural technologies, digital platforms, e-commerce, and you can see here digital trade, AI are expected to result in significant labor market disruption. Significant disruption is expected to be experienced from macroeconomic trends and technological process in the next 5 years. And therefore, the underlying fact is technology will limit the jobs of the future to jobs related to technology, and job creation is likely to be driven by green transition. That is a very important thing. Half of the measured economy is in unorganized sector. Half of the measured economy is in unorganized and informal sector. So therefore, we must understand that economic growth, from where is it going to come from? I was wondering whether, is it because of the green climate change aspects these are all happening, or climate change actions, green financing options, and solutions to climate change problems. They are technologically driven, and technology probably is in the driver's seat to decide the things and the way of things. It is not, in my opinion, some of you may have a difference of opinion, but it is not, in my opinion, that the climate change and green financing have driven the technology. No, they are also, that much only we can say. Now, continuing with the state of economy in the green financing thought, I was looking at what is the inflow of non-resident deposits into the country. In 22-23, it is 8 billion, moved from 3.2 a year ago. $8 billion US has come from the non-resident deposits in NRO accounts and NRE accounts, etc., etc. And one of the aspects which is covered in the framework for green financing issued by the Reserve Bank of India on the 11th April 2023 says the green financing deposits will be denominated in Indian rupees only. Moving from the source of thing, we should remember, as I was talking about the OECD requirements, as I was talking about the guidelines and the disruption it is likely to make in the employment sector and the workforce, there is a requirement for being conscious about integrity of information provided by enterprises engaged in this business. If I am referring to, if I may borrow the MCA's voluntary guidelines on the corporate governance, principle number 9 is reminded, because we have the cases of, for example, the Volkswagen. We have the cases of, for example, the what you can call the Johnson & Johnson in the US, where 2.5 billion was remitted as penalty to meet the court verdict. Businesses should disclose all information truthfully and factually and through labeling and other means, because what ultimately we see is consumers must understand what they are consuming, and there should be a self-responsibility to disclose things. It's very important. Therefore, integrity of information plays a very important force. Source of deposits, from where it can come, plays an important role. As of now, framework will give only Indian rupees green deposits, and OECD reports connects the board's role to the functioning that we are talking about, and how the economy is going to be driven is given by the economic outlook in the RBI's May 2023 bulletin. Now, what are the important greens that we need to understand in the framework from the deposit side? The deposits are we can say the liability side of the lending institutions. If the liability side must be considered as the most important factor, and it should, you will understand shareholders are not the important stakeholders. It is the depositors who are the most important stakeholders. The liability side of the balance sheet is driven by deposits, and therefore the asset side must be in tune with that. So when we talk about green financing, the asset side also matters, liability side matters more. The framework clarifies green financing can be for green activities and projects which are mentioned in para 7 of these guidelines. I will come to you a little later in the next slide probably, but we can understand Reserve Bank has over a period of time identified what are the activities and projects which could be called as green activities. And green deposit is nothing but a deposit received by a regulated entity like a commercial bank for the purpose of financing green activities. Green finance is nothing but financing and investing green activities that contributes to climate change mitigation, climate adaptation, resilience, and climate-related environmental objectives, including biodiversity management and nature-based solutions. The last important fourth green is very important. It is not green, actually, it is red. It is greenwashing, means of a practice of marketing products and services as green. Now you will relate why I went to OECD report, why I went to the integrity aspects of it. Greenwashing means the practice of marketing products and services as green, when in fact they do not meet the requirements. Therefore, most important the topmost priority must be due diligence. It's very important that we have a due diligence to be done in respect of deployment to the borrowers of the money raised from the green deposits. Most important part is the asset side of the balance sheet, and regulated entities must be able to require to allocate the proceeds through the raised through the green deposits in certain areas specified here: energy efficiency, resource utilization, reduction of carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, for promoting climate resilience and adaptation and value and improving the natural ecosystems and biodiversity. See the green activities: renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean transportation, climate change adaptation, sustainable water and waste management. You can see here that the first 4 or 5 bullets is of WWE: waste, water, energy, waste management, sustainable water consumption or reduction in the water consumption, and renewable energy. WWE: green buildings and pollution prevention and control, sustainable management, and terrestrial aquatic biodiversity conservation. Now you see here, the due diligence supposed to be basis certain parameters. We have to understand certain drivers and the fundamentals. Therefore, I looked at the report which says 85% of the organizations which are covered in the report identify the need for new and frontier technologies, broadening of digital access, and ESG standards as most likely to drive transformation. Please see this particular sentence and understand the value of this program to the value addition this program makes. 75% of companies are looking at big data, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence, which are ultimately, in my opinion, going to reduce the effect of all these existing technologies over the climate change effect. And the important thing is, the second ranked technology encompasses education and workforce technologies. The reason is, you read the third bullet, India's job growth coming to India, 61% of broader applications of ESG standards, followed by increased adaptation of increased adaptation of new technologies and broadening of digital access. India is poised, beautifully said, that we have the opportunity to leverage to become an economic powerhouse. Now, what are the due diligence aspects? Lenders must see how much of their assets are green today. Financing a borrower for green program is a green finance. And green financing includes a borrower lending to a borrower who is engaged in manufacturing machines, equipments, and tools that are capable of reducing consumption of energy, water, and management or reduction of waste. Developing green technologies. I have added developing skills and providing training to manpower. The reason is, today you see what employers are looking. Employers are looking for people who possess behavioral skills suitable for 23-27 transition. People with these skills will be better prepared to meet challenges and opportunities. This is a socio-economic goal, in my opinion. 6 in 10 workers require training, but only half of the workers are seen to have access to the adequate training opportunities. I am bringing environmental and social aspects together because green financing will not survive unless we have a stable, peaceful, social environment. And therefore, I have added developing skills and providing training to manpower in these new areas where the economic growth is seen is a very important factor of green financing. Major parameters are, what is the policy of the borrower? Whether there is any environmental policy, whether there is any environmental impact. If there is an impact, there must be a policy. What is the energy consumption? What are the sources of energy? Primary sources, renewable energy intensity, CHG intensity, water management, waste management, and whether the company or borrower is adopting sustainable reporting frameworks, or is it in the supply chain side of the companies which are adopting such reporting frameworks. What about the third-party due diligence reports on ESG of the borrower? These 10 are very important parameters we must know. Now we are going to take another 3 important requirements under the framework. Number 1, third-party verification of compliance. The proceeds used must be complying with the para 17 of the framework, which are the green activities and projects. Therefore, regulated entities must monitor end use of funds. Whether the deposits raised or used for these green activities only must be third-party verified. Internal controls and policies, project evaluation, selection, etc. should also be taken into account. Point number 1. Now let me come to the point number 2, impact assessment. Impact assessment is an important requirement. Assistance of external firms can be availed, and therefore, whether green financing to a green activity has created a green impact. That is what is important, because we are all aware of a jargon called evergreening. In a banking parlance, that is a different meaning, but it is everywhere green. That is why I prefaced my presentation by saying integrity is important, and impact will bring out the integrity aspect of it. Reporting requirements. These are all the reporting requirements on the stipulated in the framework. The RE, that is regulated entity, must look at all these requirements. It has to be placed before the board of directors within 3 months from the end of the financial year. It should show what is the green deposit that is raised and what are the green projects where the funding is done, what is the amount allocated for the green projects, and what is the third-party verification assurance report and the impact assessment report. These disclosures should also be made in the annual financial statements as per the Reserve Bank's framework on green financing. I would end up my presentation by saying this, which is Barack Obama was saying, we are the first generation to feel the effect of climate change and the last who can do something about it. I will say green financing cannot be looked at as a method of raising money from the depositors for the purpose of green activities financing. It is not a standalone, ordinary, technical subject of ticking the box. Raising funds already on the liability side of the balance sheet of the lending institutions, which are regulated entities, is a matter of trust. We are all aware of it. A big trust is placed on the lending institutions when ordinary U&B depositors place their funds. Now, when we talk about green deposits, please understand that is why I insisted on due diligence. That due diligence is an important component of the trust, because when depositors ordinarily deposit their money, there is a trust factor. And when they deposit for a particular purpose, it is trust square, I can say. And therefore, there is a all the more onerous responsibility on the lending institutions that accept the deposits which are green deposits. And therefore, the framework has thought it fit to introduce this third-party verification of compliance, impact assessment, and disclosures to be made as a special three-layered requirements. Apart from the pre-lending due diligence must be done, screening must be done. We must have the capacity to build systems in the underwriting process itself so that the deposits are identified, the source of funds are identified for being funded to the projects, and the projects are able to show the parameters are my own generation, but it could be increased. There could be more this thing. But last but not the least, I'll tell you one important statistics. You know that 2022 budget speech, the government of India, finance minister, when she said about the budget, she talked about a 280 gigawatts of solar power alone. The only solar power, 280 gigawatt. And 2022 end, our solar power capacity is 54 gigawatts, which is approximately 25%. So we are talking about some 220 gigawatts in the store. 220 gigawatts, for example, if you take the Tamil Nadu as an Indian state, you will find 10%. Monitored solar energy is about 8%, but total is 10%. So if you were to apply this 10% on the incremental solar power capacity built, which the budget has said, for example, under 220, 10% is 22. 22 gigawatts of solar power is required to be added from the Tamil Nadu alone. Of course, the deadline is 2030. I mean, approximately, I'm saying the purpose is not to say about this. The purpose is 1 megawatt of solar energy creation is equal to 5 crores, approximately 5.6 also it can be imported solar panel. 5 crores, 1 megawatt, 1000 megawatt, 5,000 crores, 1 gigawatt, 22 gigawatt, 1,10,000 crore. Therefore, that we are discussing is not an ordinary subject. It is a big subject. Looking at only solar energy, you can understand the size is 110,000 crores. With this note, I will thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravichandran sir, for that practical and very latest insight about the green financing and the funding and the options that are available, and also the requisites which the companies have to comply with. Really, the due diligence part or the third-party verification and the other requirements which you have harped upon. Really, I think it was a very useful information which you have shared us, sir. Within a very short span of time, you have covered a a wide range of topics. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So with that, the technical session 3 comes to an end, and now we are moving on to the technical session 4. The topic of this session is innovations for achieving sustainability development goals, SDGs. In this session, the first speaker will be Aditi Kumar, AVP Biotech MedTech Projects, Startups Innovation and Incubation Center, IIT Kanpur. And the topic is meeting SDG goals, disruptive digital technologies and innovations. So before going into the session, I request 𝗉𝐿𝐶𝐠 sir to stop sharing the screen, sir. Thank you, sir. So a brief introduction about Aditi Kumar. She is academically trained in biological sciences and bioengineering, and Aditi is currently leading biotechnology programs and initiatives at SAIC IIT Kanpur, and she was part of the ventilator project, an initiative undertaken by IIT Kanpur for developing ICU ventilator during the first wave of COVID-19. And our major responsibility was to manage the product development and product validation. And she is leading the bio design program between IIT Kanpur and KGMU, Lucknow, and also a part of left ventricular assist device LVAD project between IIT Kanpur and Narayana Health. And Aditi Kumar leads and evangelizing industry academia collaborative conversations regularly at many industry forums related to medtech, biotech innovations. So over to you, ma'am. We welcome you on this World Environment Day, and over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sivaraman, for the kind introduction. And I would like to also extend my huge thank you to Ms. Rama Venugopal for extending the invitation and having me present academia on this forum, and also, bring attention to all the exciting innovations brewing at the Incubation Center of IIT Kanpur. For everyone in the audience, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box, or you may also, raise your hand. I would be more than happy to answer any of your queries.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. I request all the panelists to come on video mode so that we can take a snapshot of all the panelists. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you. Sorry.
Sure. No, that's fine, sir. Maybe we can change the view also to change.
1 second.
𝗉𝐿𝐶𝐠 sir, please come on video mode, sir.
Gallery.
Mathur sir. Yeah. Because every session the panelists are changing, so we want to take a snapshot of every technical session, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Great. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible, madam.
Just...
You can move on to the yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. So as Mr. Sivaraman introduced, I am Aditi Kumar, and I am also an alumna of IIT Kanpur. I've been associated with the Incubation Center of IIT Kanpur for last almost 6 years. And I look after all the biotech and life sciences related innovations at the Incubation Center. However, the incubator is sector agnostic, so we have wide array of startups working in agriculture, clean energy, IoT, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, hardware, etc. I look after the biotech and life sciences vertical. So before I give you a glimpse of all the innovations which are catering to sustainability development goals, I would like to share a very important piece of information. Just today, the NIRF rankings were announced, and IIT Kanpur has secured the first position under innovation category. So for last 4 or 5 years, we've been struggling at around number 4 and 5. This year, we managed to secure first position. And our startups and our students, early stage innovator students, have played a major role in helping IIT Kanpur to be at the position where it is at now. So the first innovation I would like to talk about is 𝗚𝗹. I am 110% sure at least 60 to 70% people in the room know about 𝗚𝗹. So 𝗚𝗹 is a flower upcycling startup based out of Kanpur. The name of the company is Kanpur Flower Cycling, and they have developed the process for upcycling flower waste into different value-added products. The product that you are seeing on the right side of the screen, so that is their first product, the incense stick. But they have also developed a substitute for thermocol, which is called FloraFoam. So it is a styrofoam substitute, which is environment friendly. And this startup has also been it has been able to secure Series A fund, and it is also 𝐼𝐴 is also one of the investors in the company. And recently, last year, the company was also amongst the finalists of 𝗚𝗏𝐿 Prize under, again, the sustainability and circular economy category for its third innovative product, which is called 𝗚𝗏𝗲𝗏. So it is environment-friendly, animal-free leather derived again out of upscaled flower waste. And they have been supported by Government of India as well through direct DIG funding program. So the person you see on the screen is Ankit Agarwal, the founder of 𝗚𝗹. And if you have any more questions, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. Unfortunately, they couldn't win, but it was from India. This was the only company who was shortlisted as one of the finalists. Next, we have 𝗚𝗏𝐼𝐺𝐸 Industries Trading Private Limited. So 𝗚𝗏𝐼𝐺𝐸 is developing completely compostable plastic from chicken feather waste. So as you would know, a lot of feather waste is generated from the poultry farm, and they are utilizing one of the key component found in feather waste, which is keratin protein. And using that, they are trying to develop completely compostable plastic with good tensile strength. The company has also established, so as you can see, the white sheet-like paper you see on the screen is what they have been able to derive, process, and everything from feather waste. The third company I would like to talk about, it's a women-led startup called Duosys Bioinnovation. So as you would know, India is the second largest producer of tamarind waste in the country. And so the founder here, she saw a lot of opportunity here, and she has developed a gelling agent based after extracting it from tamarind seed waste. And usually, so far, all the gelling agents used in bakeries and hotels, etc., most of them are imported either from China or from Malaysia and Bangkok. So this can lead to an in-house gelling agent made from tamarind seed waste. So this is a very good example of waste to value, and she's also trying to create employment opportunities for women based in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, because that's where those are the two states happen to be good producer of tamarind. Then I would like to talk about Kinoco Biotech. So Kinoco Biotech is also using different agriculture waste to develop sustainable packaging material. This startup is like at a very prototype development phase, and what you see on the left side of the screen is a mold that they have prepared from the agriculture waste. And all the startups that I am talking here now about, all of them are supported by the incubation center through one or the other government schemes provided for nurturing early as well as late stage innovators. Last but not the least, this is a polycycling solution. So this company is trying to handle the legacy plastic. As you would know, in the Uttar Pradesh, like in the state of Uttar Pradesh, we consume a lot of tobacco, and you would see a lot of non-degradable single-use plastic wrappers, etc., choking the landfills, the water drainage system, etc. So this startup is trying to deal with the legacy plastic, and they are trying to develop building or constructive blocks out of that legacy plastic. And they have done a lot of testing as well to assess the tensile strength, the temperature resistance, and resistance to fungal growth, etc. Recently, they installed this sitting chair in the DM office of Kanpur. With this, with nurturing, with over almost 6 years of experience in nurturing climate-related innovations at the incubation center, we reached out to 𝐕𝐻, which is Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And since Swachh Bharat Mission is taking the new height, we recently launched a program called Startup Gateway for Garbage-Free Cities. And as part of this initiative with 𝐕𝐻, we are supporting 20 startups under the Smart City, Clean City initiative, and we are trying to support startups who are working towards waste to value added products, and meanwhile catering to circular economy. As part of this initiative, 20 lakh rupees would be provided to each startup for either developing the prototype or for validating or testing the prototype for a period of 1 year. So these are some of the companies which have already been shortlisted as part of first cohort of Garbage-Free City initiative launched by the Incubation Center. So this was it for today's presentation. Please feel free to ask any question if you have. I just wanted to keep it very clean and crisp, addressing to the topic.
Thank you, Ms. Aditi, for that wonderful presentation about the innovations and the startups, where they are also contributing a lot for eco-friendly products, which has come to a limelight of all the people here. And really, we are thankful to you for sparing your time for making this presentation, and our hearty wishes for IIT Kanpur for getting the #1 rank in innovation front. Thank you. You deserve that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. With that, technical session 4 comes to an end. And now we are moving on to the last technical session of this event, World Environment Day. We are happy to invite Sri Subir Ghosh. And he'll be, this is technical session number 5, and it is about greenwashing. The topic is greenwashing. And I'll just share a brief profile about Mr. Subir Ghosh. He is actually an independent journalist and a writer and a researcher who writes about environment, corruption, chronic capitalism, conflict, wildlife, and cinema. And he is the author of 2 books and has co-authored 2 more with others. In mainstream media, he has worked with the Press Trust of India, PTI, the Telegraph, and the Daily News and the Analysis, DNA. And he has handled communications and publications for the Center for Science and Environment, CSE, the Wildlife Trust of India, WTI, the Federation of Hotels and Restaurant Associations of India, FHRAI, and SPG publications. Over the years, he has been a columnist for a host of publications, including First Post, Kindle, Asian Correspondent, the Asian, Yuva, and the Impal Free Press, and among others. He's a co-founder and executive editor of TextFash.com, a cutting-edge digital publication which explores the global textiles, apparel, fashion industry through the interface between academic rigor and journalistic finesse, and writes, edits, reports, and designs professionally trained and qualified photographer. So now we welcome Mr. Subir Ghosh for this session of last technical session. And over to you, sir, for your thought process on consumer protection, greenwashing, misleading the consumers. Is greenwashing covered under regulatory purview? That's a topic under which you are going to share your thought process. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sivaraman, and thank you also, Ramaji, for inviting me to this event. Say, I am a journalist, and say I am not going to make any PowerPoint presentations, but so I mean, I am also not going to tell you about elementary things about greenwashing, because you can always Google that up. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take you through a personal journey over the last 30 odd years, and I will tell you just how I landed here. There's just one thing that you need to keep in mind, that a lot of things that I will say today would be mostly from the textiles and apparel industry point of view, but almost all of it would be applicable kind of across the board. And one thing I also need to point out beforehand is that I don't know whether it is good or bad, is that I am not beholden to industry, and I'm also not beholden to the government or anyone for that matter. So my thing is going to be absolutely agnostic, and it's devoid of any ideology. Now, where do we start? Let's start at the very beginning. At the very beginning, in the sense of where modern environmental history begins. Modern environmental history begins with the Earth Summit of June 1992, which was the UNCED, UNCED, United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. It is also known, or rather better known, as the Rio Summit, which happened in June 1992. Just as we speak, it was exactly about 31 years ago. A lot has happened since then. The UNCED, the Rio Summit, resulted in three things. The Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, there was Agenda 21, and there were the Forest Principles. Now, two other things also came out of the Rio Summit. The first was the UNFCCC, and also the CBD, which is the Convention on Biological Diversity. Now, this is the beginning of modern environmental history, but you can also go back a little bit, probably, actually not that, about 20 years. So the first ever move on trying to work on environmental issues was made in 1972, which resulted in the Stockholm Declaration, which was also in the month of June 1972. This resulted in 1983 with the UN Secretary General 𝐉𝐿_𝗏 forming the WCED, which is the World Commission on Environment and Development, which is better known as the Brundtland Commission, because it was headed by the former Prime Minister of Norway, Gro Harlem Brundtland. This resulted in the publication of a report, which is better known as the Brundtland Commission report. It was titled Our Common Future. It is this document that lays even today, 40 years later, more or less 40 years later, it lays the fundamentals of what we today even understand as sustainable development. The Brundtland Commission report actually led eventually to the Rio Summit, and what today we have are a cluster of conventions, lot of other UN agencies working on all these issues. Now, this is also something that I have more or less seen firsthand. I joined journalism in the very early 1990s, and just a few months after I joined journalism, the Rio Summit was And so my personal career in journalism has more or less kind of grown, seeing all these things firsthand, right, more or less from the beginning. That is more or less in very brief, modern environmental history. I mean, it's not fair to do that in about 2-3 minutes. I know that, but that will give you a very fairly good idea where we have progressed in the last about 30 years, from 1992 to today, 2023. Now let us look at another development which happened parallelly, which is our subject of the matter today, which is greenwashing. Now, there are lots of definitions about greenwashing. One was mentioned by an earlier speaker, and which I need to vehemently disagree with, for the simple reason that that was only one aspect of greenwashing, that is misleading claims. Now, if you look up the Wikipedia entry on greenwashing, you will find that there are at least 6 other forms of greenwashing which are just as bad or probably worse. Now that needs to be kept in mind, because you cannot handle greenwashing unless you know what greenwashing actually is. Greenwashing is just a term which is akin to whitewashing. I mean, you have something dark, murky, you just paint it over, you just whitewash it, and then it becomes clean. Greenwashing, in simple words, is just that. You do something environmentally harmful or degrading, and you do something else to paint it all over with a green brush, trying to show that you are actually doing something which is beneficial to the environment, which it is not. And that is absolutely the reason why it is called greenwashing. Now, where does the term come from? Now, if you look at it parallelly, this term greenwashing was mentioned for the first time in 1986. Now look at it parallelly. This was absolutely also the time when 𝐿𝐴 was working on the commission on the WCED. In 1986, an environmentalist, or rather an ecologist, actually a qualified ecologist, was staying in a hotel in New York, I think. Now, he noticed one thing, that the hotel industry at that time was putting up notices in the hotel rooms saying that about the usage of towels, and saying, please save the environment in terms of towel usage. Now, what he saw was that the hotels were telling you to save out on towels, but on the other hand, they were doing nothing about energy usage. They were nothing doing about water usage. So what he realized was this was just a reputable, a profitable way of showing environmental consciousness, while at the same time being actually environmentally harmful. That is where the term greenwashing comes from. So this is 86 here and 87 there, which is the Brundtland Commission report. Now, the first time that this was actually comprehensive, used in the sense of being hard-hitting, was during the 1992 Rio Summit. That was when Greenpeace brought out a leaflet, or a kind of a brochure or pamphlet, you can say, which was titled The Book of Greenwashing. It was essentially documenting the corporate takeover of the 1992 Rio Summit. Now, this document was kind of expanded by the Third World Network, and which became, just let me read it out to you, Greenwashing, the reality behind corporate environmentalism. This kind of tells you what the subject matter was, kind of itself. Now, what was happening parallelly around the same time? You have one hand experts working on environmental issues. Then you had the people looking at environmental issues in a different way. And third one was kind of quantifying what was going on. But this happened in more or less actually in 1991, even just a year before the Rio Summit. The American Marketing Association, in a kind of a study, found out that almost between 50 to 60% of all environmental claims had least one deceptive claim. This is so this greenwashing thing actually kind of starts from the very 80s and 90s only. But the reaction came in the US. The reaction came in the very late 1990s, in 1998, when the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, issued its first set of green guidelines. So that is where it's just not about environmental regulations. It's also about what you say or what you communicate about the environment to the public. That is where the subject of greenwashing kind of enters the public discourse. Now you would have been seeing and reading about greenwashing here and there all the time for the last couple of years, and you will also notice this has been kind of reaching a peak almost, which is the reason why you have a session on greenwashing at an event like this today. But 5 years later, you wouldn't have had a session on greenwashing. But today you have it. Why is it so now? It's extremely important to understand this, why it has happened so now. And again, I will take you on a very personal level. See, I entered college in the very early 1980s. At that time, I lived in a very small township, and we since it was not even a town, it was a small township. And I personally and all people of my age knew very little about anything called the environment. The word, the environment probably did not exist as such. So there was a classmate of mine who happened to go to Delhi, and he enrolled in a subject called PhD in Environmental Sciences. At that time, we had no clue what it was. I'm talking about the very early 1980s. And he also told me, in fact, that why did you come and take up this course? I said, no, I would rather prefer mathematics, and that is where I went. But this will tell you what has changed drastically in the last 40 years. Today, every college for the name, and definitely every university, now which more or less deals with sciences, etc., they all have courses on environmental sciences. Ranges from just basic environmental sciences to environmental engineering to everything. The world itself, in that sense, has changed totally. All in the last 40 years, from what I have seen, and which is why I can keep on repeating that this is a personal journey, and that is why I can tell you what has changed in the last 30-40 years. Now, greenwashing, as a term, was brought into the parlance in 1986, but it gained common currency only in 1999, when the Oxford English Dictionary introduced the word. So since then, it has more or less been gaining acceptance, or rather, let's put it this way, it has been increasing in terms of usage. Now, greenwashing, environmental activism, these have grown very slowly. In the very early 1990s, after the 1992 Rio Summit, you had a kind of a little bit of you can't call it a boom really, but you had a little bit of a growth in terms of environmental organization, say in India and also across the world. Now, this has been increasing slowly. In the very early 1990s, this was what you would call an AP, an arithmetic progression. This slowly became a geometric progression, and over the years, it has become an exponential progression. So today, compared to even 5 years ago, you have a lot of data. You have a lot of data about what something is and what something is not. You also have a huge number of specialists. So today you cannot make a claim and just get away with it, because there would be 10,000 experts who are specialists in the subject who can just rip you apart. 20 years ago, even 20 years, even 10 years ago, you can just about say anything. This is green, that is green. We are changing our old bulbs into LED bulbs, and therefore we are saving so much of energy and all that. Now you can't make those hollow claims anymore. Everything needs to be substantiated. Everything needs to be kind of given with absolute data, and you have to be transparent about it. You cannot get away with it like you did say earlier. Related to greenwashing is also a term called green scamming. Green scamming is something that people don't really talk about because it's still not so much in the public discourse as a term, but you will all know. But let me just read out a few names here. So in the US, there was something called the National Wetlands Coalition. It was not what the name suggests. It was basically something which was sponsored by the oil drilling industry and the real estate industry. Now, there was also something called Friends of Earth Mountain. Again, it sounds very green. It is not. It was sponsored by a mining company. There was the Global Climate Coalition, which was a host of companies fighting against climate regulation. There's the funniest one is probably this is the European Institute for Climate and Energy. This is something which does not even have an office. It is just a website which propagates fake news about climate. So this is where green scamming comes in, and this is something that which will probably be tackled by people in the coming years. Now, the title of my presentation, even though I am not really technically making the presentation, was that, but I'll be mentioning regulations as well. See, things are still extremely nebulous right now. The reason being that the environmental laws per se, just environmental laws, are still kind of in a flux. Things are still either taking shape or being refined and being modified. Given the climate crisis that we are in right now. Now, only when you have laws about the environment, only then you can subsequently have laws about environmental claims, which is related to greenwashing. Now, among the laws and regulations that are currently in force, you have the Australian Trade Protection Act, where you cannot make misleading claims. You have the CMA in UK, which is the Competition and Markets Authority, which has a green claims code, so you cannot just about make any claim and get away with it. And the CMA in the UK has been cracking down all these kind of claims. There have been lots of penalties in the last few months or something, but they are going to get cracking on it all the more in the days to come. In the US, the FTC, which we had to brought out, which was the green, what was it? Let me just take it. It was the green guidelines in 1982, which is now the green guides. And it is being revised right now. Lots of industries don't come under the purview of it, but they will probably do, and maybe in the in the next few years. Now, among all the laws and regulations being brought in, the one that is likely to have the widest ramifications are the EU Green Claims Directive, which is still not does not have a legal framework in that sense. It is not being implemented. It has to pass by the member states and all, and then it will take a formal, absolute, not only legal, let's say a punitive shape, which means that if you make all those bogus claims about the environment or how you are saving the environment, then you will be penalized heavily. And the key phrase there is no data, no claim, which means that if you don't have the data, you cannot make any environmental claim. And this kind of this series of measures in the European Union is followed by a study that was carried out by the European Commission last year, I think, which found that over 50% of the environmental claims made by different companies were basically bogus. So that is why there is a crackdown in the European Union, and it matters to lots of other countries who actually export to the European Union. How does it matter? I'll give you just one example. You know, there are companies who make lots of claims about their emissions, and earlier you could just talk about your scope 1 emissions and get away with it. But now you need to talk about your scope 3 emissions, which are not in Europe, which are most likely in Southeast Asia, in South Asia, in Africa. So if those companies in Europe need to make certain claims, then certain things need to change in all these other regions and countries. Therefore, it is going to have a far-reaching impact than people think it is going to. It is going to change a lot of things. In India, it's going to change a lot of things in all these textile manufacturing hubs of Southeast Asia, like Cambodia, Vietnam, even Thailand, in Bangladesh, across the border that side, in Pakistan, in African countries. So this is something that lots of people would really like to keep in mind. Now, this is the situation that we find ourselves in today. So the logical question, next question would be, what next? What next? The first thing is going to be about transparency. Now, transparency, so no, you cannot make, like they said, no data, no claims in Europe, which means that you have to be transparent about whatever data you have. You cannot just say that we are saving the climate because we have cut down our emissions by so much and so. I mean, you will have to say what your emissions are. You have to say where and how your scope 3, scope 1 emissions lie, where your scope 2 emissions lie, where your scope 3 emissions there. And this is only about climate. I'm not even going into water usage, energy usage, etc. So this need for transparency is probably, in my opinion, probably going to gain currency, and all environmental claims sooner and later will need to quote, or you will need to attribute your claims to something or the other. You cannot say that we have cut down on chemical usage in a particular product without saying what all chemicals you are using, without saying, without disclosing which of these chemicals are harmful. So that is something that all manufactured countries will need to keep in mind, because you can't get away with it again. And see, there is something that is kind of an underlying thing about this entire thread that I've been speaking about. See, it is I'm primarily an investigative journalist, and we have something that we kind of believe in as a watchword or something, which is that it is never about the crime. It is always about the cover-up. So you can make a crime. You can say example would be, it has come out in recent years that Exxon, Shell knew about climate change about 40 to 50 years back, but they never disclosed it. They never disclosed it. It's absolutely criminal. But just a few days, 2 or 3 days back, there was an expose in the Guardian which talked about pesticides company who knew about the harmful effects of the pesticide, but they never disclosed it. They had the medical tests. They knew that these chemicals would have certain kind of impact on human health, but they they brushed it under the carpet. It was not about the crime today, it is about the cover-up, and it will always be the cover-up, and that is what greenwashing actually does. It covers things, and like I said earlier, that it's going to be extremely difficult for anyone to get away with bogus environmental claims in today's world, because there are people who know and there are people who care. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your knowledge and also your lifetime experience about greenwashing and the related aspects. And it was really very useful, practical reality, ground reality. You have really highlighted the real life situations wherein the hotels and other areas where actually the greenwashing and other things are being how far it is implemented and how it is getting diluted or maybe taken seriously, and also the you have given a very good awareness about what is greenwashing is all about. That's a great thing, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful session. Thank you, sir. Now we have a small poll which we request all our participants to participate in the poll, and followed by that will be the question and answers. With the panelists, you can ask the questions, and I request admin to trigger the poll.
1 second, sir, just check.
Yeah.
Yeah, launching. Yeah. Yeah, it's on actually. It's on.
Yeah, it's a feedback on today's webinar, World Environment Day webinar.
Just 5 questions. It will take about 2 minutes. I request all the participants to take the poll. I request all participants to join the poll, please. It takes about 2-3 minutes.
So far, 18 of us have completed the poll.
Yeah,
and,
just give
score is going up.
Yeah. எங்களால பண்ண முடியல. It's only for delegates நினைக்கிறேன். Participants இல்ல நமக்கு வரல. But needs improvementல கொடுத்திருக்காங்க பாரு 10%. அதுக்குதான். So generally வந்துட்டு இதுதான். அங்கதான். So we need to look into all this. ஐயோ, please, sorry. Request all participants to take the poll, please. We can still go up a little, move up a little. Request all others. Ama, acha. I think Ramkumar sir, this is fine. I think we can move on, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I end the poll? Yeah, share the results. It's okay.
So thank you for participating in the poll. Thank you very much. If there are any specific questions to be asked to the panelists, now the session is open. Please feel free to ask the questions.
There are questions in the Q&A, Ramkumar sir. Just please look into it. So there are some questions there.
Yeah, I'll just see that.
Some of the speakers are not there to answer maybe the Q&A. Sharing. Check feedback. Stop sharing. It's getting
I
activated.
think almost all the questions raised by the audience have been answered specifically by the panelists, madam.
Oh, answered, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So there are no questions, then we'll leave it open. If somebody wants to ask some questions,
Yeah. No, there is one question from Mr. 𝐒𝐿𝐵𝐴. Apart from BRSR, can anyone enlighten on upcoming regulatory requirements for ESG in India, public Asia? So there is one question. So I think Josna madam is not here. I think we'll get the question posted to her and get the reply. I think. Madam, you have to unmute. You are in mute.
No, we'll mail to Ruby and we'll get her feedback. That's fine.
Yeah.
Actually, she has also shared some material to be referred. Actually, she has shared the material. I will be sending, from CCC, we will send a mail to all the registered delegates. It's an informative material, reference materials, links she has posted.
Yeah.
We will share it with all the participants today.
Okay.
Specific questions you can actually write to us. We can even reach out to the speakers, request them to answer. Not an issue.
Okay. So on behalf of CCC Consultants Consortium of Chennai and also the upcoming association MSCC, I heartily thank all of the panelists who have taken their valuable time and also really prepared well for presenting their thoughts and thought process for the topics which have been given to them. They have done a lot of justice to the topic, and I think all the participants were also largely benefited with the varied domain-specific experts who have come here and shared their views on the different topics what we have taken up. Right from, we had 5 themes today on World Environment Day, and I think really it's a way forward for all of us to put our hands together in strengthening these regulatory compliances or creating awareness in the industry, creating awareness among ourselves, and updating and upskilling our knowledge. I think these type of sessions will help us a long way to it will kindle our interest towards all these topics. And really, I thank all the participants, because from 2:30 to 6 is not a very short time. It's a very long time. You have been sitting before the computer and participating in all this event. So I wholeheartedly thank all the participants here. And also once again, I thank all the panelists and also the organizers. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. See you in the next session. The next session will be on June 7th. So please mark your calendar. Again, we'll be coming back to you, and encourage your friends and other fellow consultants and also industry clients to participate in large numbers in these type of sessions, which will be very helpful for every one of us. And please register. Already the registration link is available. And please register yourself for the upcoming 2 sessions. June 7th, there is one session. And also on June 9th, there is one session. So please participate in large numbers. Let us all make it a grand success. And thank you, Rama ma'am, for special thanks to you for pulling up all the, for organizing all the varied domain speakers. It's not a very easy task, I know, because from a law domain to a chartered accountant to a journalist, a varied panel we had. Really, in fact, it was a wonderful thing. And I wholeheartedly thank you, ma'am, for your initiative that what you have done. And thank you, Mathur sir, for being a support role in this entire session. And thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for the backup team, backend team, who are all instrumental in creating these links. And really, without them, this would not have made possible and very successful. And the backend team of CCC, special thanks to them for having arranged all these live virtual sessions. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.